The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
It's the second week of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive, and Free Speech TV needs you. I'm here in Washington, D.C., which is why it looks a little different and maybe sounds a little funny, but we're at the headquarters of Our Revolution, and we're going to be interviewing Larry Cohen, who's I believe the board chair, and Nina Moore, who is the Senator Nina, who is the president, as I recall, and it's going to be a great show, but the big point is, or it is a great show, I guess you're watching it right now, we pre-recorded this just before the show, but the big point is that when was the last time on, quote, commercial television you saw anybody go to a place like Our Revolution and just talk to the folks for a couple of hours and find out what's going on and what's the state of the real resistance in the United States and who's doing what and what it's turning into and all those kind of things? You're not going to hear that on network television. You're not going to hear that in the corporate media. Instead, you're going to get some dramatic pablum like, who's upset, who's unhappy, is Jared Kushner going to go to jail? Well, of course, we'll talk about whether he's going to go to jail, but that seems to be the only thing that they focus on, or Mike Flynn or whatever, is drama and sports. Who's ahead, who's behind, like the Roy Moore race. They don't talk about Roy Moore's crazy views on things. They don't talk about the fact that in 2011 he co-authored an educational program for for-profit colleges that teaches that women should not be allowed to vote and should not be allowed to run for public office. That was in 2011. That was 6 years ago. Roy Moore co-authored a college course teaching that women should be excluded from the American body politic. Entirely excised. Have you heard that on the news? No, probably what you've heard is the polls, because that's all they do is sports. Here you get the real news. Is that worth something to you? Is it? Again, only 2% of Free Speech TV viewers may ever make a contribution. If you're getting value from this program and this network, please call now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number, 877-378-8669. And if you call during our program, and that's pretty important, like call right now during this break, and they will be able to provide you with any of a series of premiums that we're offering. With a $30 contribution, you get a Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. Yeah, it's a bumper sticker, but $30, it's I realize for some people it's a lot of money, but for most Americans, that's something that's doable. That's, for a family, that's not even the cost of going out to dinner, $30. With a $60 contribution, you get a bumper sticker, plus the Free Speech TV 16-month calendar. With a $120 contribution, which you can spread out over a year at $10 a month if you want. With a $120 contribution, you get the bumper sticker and the calendar, plus you get Van Jones's new book, Beyond the Messy Truth. Van Jones is one of the real heroes of the progressive movement. He was President Barack Obama's energy czar, his green czar, until Breitbart and the Wall Street Journal and all these right-wing hysterics, I don't know specifically if it was the Journal, certainly Fox News, went after him. How dare that black man in the White House lecture us about how to use energy when we get money from the fossil fuel barons? And they politically destroyed Van Jones, or got rid of him. We got forced Obama to get him out of the White House. That's nuts. That's nuts. And it was never even really covered. I mean, the real story was never even covered. It was just how Van Jones leaves the group. Anyhow, he wrote this brilliant book, and that's with a $120 contribution. With a $240 contribution, you get Van Jones's book. Plus, you get a new book called Citizen by Claudia Rankine. And if I'm saying her name right, my apologies to her if I'm saying it wrong, it's Rankine. The book is Citizen, and about the politics of our day. And that's with a $240 gift. You get the bumper sticker, the calendar, Van Jones's book, and Claudia's book. And with a $360 gift, you get all those things, right? The bumper sticker, the calendar, Van Jones's book, Claudia's book, plus you get my book, Unequal Protection. Now, we've offered that before, so if you already have a copy, hey, guess what? It's the holiday season, and it's a great gift. It's not a political screed. Unequal Protection is a book that your conservative uncle can read and probably agree with 95% of it. So that's the collection of gifts, plus with a $1,000 contribution, come to Portland, Oregon, or when Louise and I are here in Washington, D.C., come to D.C., and I'll take you out to lunch. And so that's the spectrum of gifts we have here in exchange for contributions, or not in exchange, in thanks and recognition of contributions. But most important, it's Free Speech TV itself. It's this extraordinary platform that's giving voice to people that the corporate media in America really doesn't want to talk about, topics that they don't want to talk about, even people that they don't. How often do you see Our Revolution on MSNBC or CNN? I mean, it's almost like the media has decided anybody who's really progressive, we don't want to have anything to do with. We've got to have middle-of-the-road Democrats and right-wing Republicans. It's crazy. So please call now to support this network and keep it alive. 877-378-8669. Please call now. Thank you.
TV.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. I'm live at the headquarters of Our Revolution in Washington, D.C. We'll be doing our show from Our Revolution here today. We're going to be at a different place every day this week. We're going to be at Greenpeace, we're going to be at the Postal Workers Union, we're going to be at Social Security Works, and we're going to be at We Act Radio. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a great time. And but here at Our Revolution, we're going to have a series of guests to inform you about what's going on with Our Revolution and the state of the Democratic Party and the state of just pretty much everything. Is Larry Cohen for our first hour. Larry, you're the board chair, right, for Our Revolution?
Board chair, yeah.
Welcome to the program.
Yeah, great to be with you again. Yeah, great to see you.
So, first of all, let's talk a little bit about the news of the day, okay? Just, and then we can start digging into some of the Our Revolution stuff, because we've got, 3 hours of Our Revolution. But Chuck Grassley, I believe this was on NPR Friday. I heard this, but he may have said it in other venues. Let me just share this with people. He said that this was an interview with the Des Moines Register. I heard the same thing on NPR, and I didn't realize it was Grassley. It must have been, though. He says, I think not having the estate tax recognizes the people that are investing, as opposed to those who are just spending every darn penny they have, whether it's on booze or women or movies. So, Larry, you don't even have to consider the inheritance tax unless you and your wife own over $22 million worth of assets, that all of which you're trying to pass along to one of your kids, or to all your kids, I guess. And I don't know anybody who I mean, how does the average working person waste $22 million on booze, women, and movies? This is crazy. What the hell is going on here?
Well, I think he shows who he cares about.
Yeah.
So he cares about, obviously, his way of life, which is the 1%, or the 1% of the 1%, and he cares about the donors who have backed him up for years. And this is contempt for working people in Iowa who grow things and make things for generations, who, in fact, not only in terms of what they produce are the backbone of our country, but also that Economics 101 teaches us that the demand curve matters. Right now, the demand curve has been smashed. There's been no wage increases in real terms after inflation for decades in this country. And instead of focusing on that, they're focused again on the supply side, 40 years of the supply side. And again, anybody who studies this at all knows it's never worked.
Right. Yeah, supply side economics is a sad joke, tragically. I found a quote from 1898, a Republican politician during the McKinley administration. They used to call this the sparrows and horses and sparrows theory. And I mean, literally starting in the 1870s, the Republicans started pitching for tax cuts and things. And the theory was that if you feed the oats to the horses, horses only have about a 50% efficient digestive system. Because horse poop is like food for a lot of other things, you know, bugs and I don't know, and mushrooms. and that the 50% of undigested oats that come out of the back end of the horse, the sparrows eat. And sparrows do love to eat from horse patties, right? And so this was the theory that literally the Republican Party was pitching in the 1870s to 1900. Everybody knew. Today we call it trickle-down economics. They called it the horse and sparrow theory, and people bought it. It's amazing. Here we are, what, 130 years later, and they're still trying to sell this crap?
Right. Well, that's the saddest point. So give them a pass for 1898 to a certain extent, although if we rely on them, we win. But that repeatedly doing the same thing with the same results, and now with the straight-faced Grassley and the entire Republican Senate and House saying the same thing all over again.
Yeah, and the other insane part of that whole thing is that it's like, you know, look at what Sam Brownback did to Kansas. It's like, I don't understand how, well, I do understand. You've seen the ads on TV that are paid for by these nonprofits associated with Koch brothers and some of the other.
Yeah, many of them, sure.
And you know, every American is going to get $2,000, or I'm going to get $1,000, or oh boy, it's a tax cut for the middle class. It's not, is it?
No, it's not at all. And as you know, I was president of the Communication Workers Union for 10 years. My successor, Chris Shelton, actually sent letters to all the major CWA employers saying, we want to know now, when you get the corporate tax cuts, it's a 40% corporate tax cut. What are the wage increases we should expect? Well, I know no one's going to be shocked to know not a single one will commit to a single dime. So we have this gap between the reality that where will it go? It'll go to shareholders. Today the Dow Jones is up 200 and something points, almost 1%, just because of the likelihood that this tax cut for the corporations will be enacted. So that's who's going to benefit. And everybody knows it, and yet many people pretend that it's something different.
Wow, remarkable. Bling. Hello. Okay, can we move to another topic of the news of the week, and then we'll get into our revolution. It looks like Mike Flynn is not just flipping on. He might flip on everybody. I mean, you know, he apparently was, part of his plea deal was that he could wear a wire, but they didn't do that. It was just a week ago. So, but the larger question, I guess, for you is, you know, you and I both lived through the impeachment of Bill Clinton. Mm-hmm. We're not old enough for Andrew Johnson, but neither of those impeachments actually got a conviction in the Senate. And in fact, I think they both missed by one vote. Uh-huh. And what do you think the possibility we could be looking at the impeachment of Donald Trump? And if that happens, what are your thoughts on Mike Pence as president?
So, you know, you're still looking at to be impeached. It takes the House doing it, where they have an overwhelming majority, at least until the elections next November. So, I still think that's a long shot, unless whoever they are, the back rooms of the Republican Party decide this guy's toxic for us. We face an election. We need to get him out. Wouldn't be for the right reasons necessarily, but it would be the same end result.
I have heard from off the record, from two Republicans who are, well, one's a fairly well-known writer and the other works for one of the right-wing websites, that if Trump signs the tax deal, and if Mueller delivers even a largely irrelevant charge, but Trump is charged with anything. I mean, look at what they went after Clinton for, lying about sex. If Mueller can pull that off, that the Republicans actually will throw Trump under the bus because they're as afraid of him as all the rest of us are when it comes to things like nuclear bombs and whatnot. Thoughts?
Well, I think there's probably truth to that in a philosophical way. The question again is, imagine the House of Representatives, imagine the 237 or so Republicans. If they don't do that overwhelmingly, they look like a dysfunctional party, even more so. So in other words, it's not like you can have 30 Republicans go with 188 Democrats and impeach the president. I mean, you could mathematically.
I think it's entirely possible. You've got, there's enough Republicans in the House who are very unhappy with Trump.
Yeah, but they got to bring it through their committees where they have the chair.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. It's Paul Ryan ultimately has final say over this. Plus,
Yeah.
John Roberts will preside over the process, which is going to make it even more weird.
Yeah.
So you're very skeptical that it'll happen.
Well, I think it has to be overwhelming where the Republican Party is actually doing it rather than the Democrats are doing it and they get a handful of Republicans to go along.
Right.
And so that's why I still think it's a long march from where we are.
Yeah. Remarkable. We're live from Washington, D.C., Our Revolution headquarters. We'll be back with more with Larry Cohen. He's with us for a bit here. Stick around. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of Larry Cohen and Our Revolution right after this. In my mind.
You're on the air, aren't you?
And welcome back. Larry Cohen and I are here. Okay, let's talk a little bit, about Our Revolution.
Great.
And well, actually, I'd like to. We just lost our commercial stations. We're still on Free Speech TV and all our non-commercial stations. So let's hold that for 4 minutes until we come back. Okay.
Okay.
But for right now, how do you see this thing playing out? We were just not just the possibility of impeachment, but just the whole. Is Trump going for a fall, or is this the kind of thing? I mean, I remember when Clinton was impeached, his popularity went up to 60, as I recall, 67% or something like that. I mean, it was well over 60%. Could that, if the Democrats actually tried to impeach him, could it just backfire terribly, or if an impeachment process actually happens?
Yeah, so again, the way the committee structure works in the House, the Republicans are going to have to take the lead. I think the Democrats, to a certain extent, are happy to hang this thing around the necks, if that's the right word, of the Republicans through the election.
Right.
So the Republican Party as a whole has to carry Trump with them, whether he campaigns or not, or whether they try to shove him in the closet.
Right.
And so I actually think it'll turn around in the new year, and it'll be, do the Republicans want to make a move like that? Can they convince him to resign so they have a more conventional Republican, although to me he's draconian, the Vice President, Pence. So I think it's hard to predict how that plays out. I do think that the election next November is going to be largely a test of whether the kind of economics that Grassley promoted, that you talk about at the beginning of the hour, whether that is something they're willing to defend, in Polk County, Iowa, let alone anywhere else in this country. But they'll actually look working people in the face and say, it has to be the horse poop to the sparrow, and you're the sparrow,
Right.
so the horse gets the oats.
Right, and the sparrow gets the half the oats, I guess.
Right. I've been questioned by you how to use terminology on the air.
Yes, thank you. It's very considerate of you.
Yes.
You mentioned that you were the president of the Communication Workers.
Yeah.
How are they doing?
They're doing well, given that working class people are under attack, whether they're union or not. The level of collective bargaining coverage in the United States is the lowest it's been, since the early 20th century. So that means most people have no bargaining, and even rights, and even those who do get to negotiate are affected by the competition from those who don't. So I would say that for working people as a whole, we have to start over. How do we get the rights at work? Are we really going to put up with just going to work and there's a sign on the door that says your rights stop here?
Maybe there should be.
We should actually print the signs and
Yeah.
put them on doors across America. Huh?
Yeah.
You have no rights, remember that. You can be fired at any time, remember that.
Is that true in every state?
California has some bureaucracy around just cause, but every other state, yeah.
Municipalities?
Municipalities, often they're civil service, so there is a hearing procedure.
But that's intrinsic to civil service. That's
Correct.
not the law of like Lansing, Michigan hasn't passed a law saying
No.
you have a right to work in Lansing.
No, the good thing about 19th century, early 20th century civil service is it does provide some due process, because before that, it was patronage. It didn't matter where your job was on the public sector ladder. You were gone when the opponent won.
But essentially everybody in the country is at will.
Yeah.
We'll be right back with more of Larry Cohen right after this.
This year's election results have generated fear, sadness, and despair.
In the days and months ahead,
our democracy may face a crisis of historic proportions.
But there is good news.
There is good news.
There is good news. Thousands of people are stepping forward in solidarity, resistance,
and resolve.
We join them.
We join them.
We join them
in standing with the most vulnerable communities among us.
Those most likely to be targeted by new restrictions and policies.
We will tell their stories here.
Here
on Free Speech TV.
We will lift their voices here
on Free Speech TV.
In the difficult times ahead, know that we will be with you 24 hours a day,
every day.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
There are millions of us
raising our voices and hearts together as one.
We've got your back.
We got your back.
Free Speech TV's got your back.
The revolution is in progress.
Live from Washington, D.C., Larry Cohen in the studio. I'm in your studio.
Yes.
Actually, we're sitting in...
Welcome to our revolution.
Right. We're actually sitting in Nina Turner's office.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. I think in the fundraiser, I renamed her as Nina Moore. I named her as the president of Free Speech TV. Okay. Yeah. My apologies to everybody watching if my fundraiser has got the wrong name in it. And my apologies to Nina. Both Ninas. So back to you, Larry.
Yes, sir.
So what's the state of our revolution right now? What's going on?
The revolution's growing, and the key to our revolution are local groups. There's 500 registered local groups, meaning that they're networked. They're in every state but South Dakota. People are working on that. They go very deep in a bunch of states where the local groups are networked together in places like Texas or Massachusetts, Maryland, Wisconsin, but it's all about the groups. So now candidates come through the groups. The candidates are then accountable back to the groups. Imagine that if they win the election.
Right.
So we're actually trying to do not just issue organizing or not just electing candidates, but what I call party building. We're actually building accountable entities, the Our Revolution groups, that can run candidates, do ballot measures, work on issues like Medicare for all or college for all, but also build a political structure that's permanent, that's not just going away when the election's over.
Tell me about the Unity Reform Commission. I understand you're the vice chair of this, and there's a big vote this Friday here in Washington, D.C. at the Marriott Wardman that is open to the public. And this is part of the Democratic National Committee. This is part of the DNC. And the Reform Commission, which you're the vice chair of, does what?
So the Unity Reform Commission came out of the Philadelphia Convention, the presidential convention. Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton agreed that rather than a fight on the floor about how or an argument on the floor about how the rules of the party would be going forward after the nomination.
And the big point here was superdelegates, wasn't it?
Yeah, superdelegates was a key point, that there were 715 superdelegates that weighed in before even the Iowa caucuses started, but also how our caucuses run, like the Iowa caucus, how our primaries run. In New York State, for example, you had to register this past October 13th to vote in the Democratic primary next September 11th. So The Unity Reform Commission, whether you're like me, the Bernie Sanders vice chair, and we have 7 others that came on through Sanders, or the Clinton 10, or the Tom Perez 3, we're all pretty unified that we need a Democratic Party that's open, transparent, not rigged. And so we've been looking at all that for the past 6 months. And as you said, on Friday we voted on a bunch of recommendations on the presidential nominating process, but also on how the party itself is run. That means 57 parties. They're all independent of the DNC over here on South Capitol.
57, the 50 states plus 7 territories?
And the Democrats abroad, Washington, D.C., and 5 territories.
5 territories. I never knew the number of territories.
Now you know.
So that's like the U.S. Virgin Islands,
yeah. Puerto Rico, Guam, the Marianas.
Yeah, and one other.
We skipped one.
Maybe there's a second island in the Virgin Islands or something. So, to what extent can individuals who are listening to our program or watching our program, to what extent can they get involved in this reform process with the DNC?
Yeah, so the main way, and this back to our revolution, we're actually encouraging this. The main way to get involved is the 3,000 counties in America. There's theoretically a structure in each for the Democratic Party. Most of them, nothing is happening. So, you know.
More than half?
Yeah, way more than half. Nothing is happening all across rural America. Wow. And so one of the things our revolution is doing is encouraging people run for precinct chair. In many cases, you volunteer, you're it. You know, like tag, you're it. So that's the main thing. The second thing is...
Hang on just a second, this is really important. So in a lot of places in the country, you just show up and say, I want to do it, and because nobody has been bothering to do it, because what the hell, it's a red state, you become, you're instantly in office.
Yeah, you're in office at the precinct level.
Yeah, right.
And then the idea is we're also turning people out at the county level, get involved, show up at the county level, run for office there, county chair, and out of that county election is how the state party is built. And you know, the main thing we would say here at our revolution is we need state parties that are transparent, inclusive, not like the New York example, where people, independent voters, which are, you know, the plurality in our country overall, that they can easily get involved and that they can feel like, hey, this is a real political party. We have debate, we have argument, we run candidates, that we have a say in determining who the candidates are. The candidates are accountable back to us when they win. It's not just about big donors. We're going to fight big money, and we're going to stand for every voter counts. We want voters in, we want money out. Build that kind of a party. Back to the Unity Reform Commission. After this commission issues its report, it goes to the full DNC, 447 members. We will need people to get involved in every state to push the more than 300 of the 447 that get elected in those states to say, time for a change, time for reform. Let's get most of the superdelegates out. That's a mandate of this commission, to get 2/3 of them out. And let's get the DNC members to vote to make those changes.
Right. That's an extraordinarily ambitious agenda. And we're hitting the break. We're hitting the end of the half hour now. But ourrevolution.com.
Yeah, ourrevolution.com. You can see a map of all the local groups. You can join a group. You can start your own group. You need at least 10 members to start a group. You can see the candidates, the issues. You can join our revolution. It's really easy, one click away.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I'll be back with your calls right after this. It's the second week of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive, and Free Speech TV needs you. I'm here in Washington, D.C., which is why it looks a little different and maybe sounds a little funny, but we're at the headquarters of Our Revolution, and we're going to be interviewing Larry Cohen, who's I believe the board chair, and Nina Moore, who is the Senator Nina, who is the president, as I recall, and it's going to be a great show, but the big point is, or it is a great show, I guess you're watching it right now, we pre-recorded this just before the show, but the big point is that when was the last time on, quote, commercial television You saw anybody go to a place like Our Revolution and just talk to the folks for a couple of hours and find out what's going on and what's the state of the real resistance in the United States and who's doing what and what it's turning into and all those kind of things? You're not going to hear that on network television. You're not going to hear that in the corporate media. Instead, you're going to get some dramatic pablum like, you know, who's upset, who's unhappy, you know, is Jared Kushner going to go to jail? Well, of course, we'll talk about whether he's going to go to jail, but that seems to be the only thing that they focus on, you know, or Mike Flynn or whatever, is drama and sports. Who's ahead, who's behind, you know, like the Roy Moore race. You know, they don't talk about Roy Moore's crazy views on things. They don't talk about the fact that in 2011 he co-authored an educational program for for-profit colleges that teaches that women should not be allowed to vote and should not be allowed to run for public office. That was in 2011. That was 6 years ago. Roy Moore co-authored a college course teaching that women should be excluded from the American body politic. Entirely excised. Have you heard that on the news? No, probably what you've heard is the polls, because that's all they do is sports. Here you get the real news. Is that worth something to you? Is it, I mean, again, only 2% of Free Speech TV viewers may ever make a contribution. If you're getting value from this program and this network, please call now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number, 877-378-8669. And if you call during our program, and that's, you know, pretty important, like call right now during this break, and you know, they will be able to provide you with any of a series of premiums that we're offering. With a $30 contribution, you get a Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. Yeah, it's a bumper sticker, but $30, you know, it's I realize for some people it's a lot of money, but for most Americans, that's something that's doable. That's, you know, for a family, you know, that's not even the cost of going out to dinner. $30. With a $60 contribution, you get a bumper sticker, plus the Free Speech TV 16-month calendar. With a $120 contribution, which you can spread out over a year at $10 a month if you want. With a $120 contribution, you get the bumper sticker and the calendar, plus you get Van Jones's new book, Beyond the Messy Truth. Van Jones is one of the real heroes of the progressive movement. He was President Barack Obama's energy czar, his green czar, until, you know, Breitbart and the Wall Street Journal and all these right-wing hysterics, I don't know specifically if it was the Journal, certainly Fox News, went after him. How dare that black man in the White House lecture us about how to use energy when we get money from the fossil fuel barons? And they you know, politically destroyed Van Jones, or got rid of him. We got, you know, forced Obama to get him out of the White House. That's nuts. That's nuts. And it was never even really covered. I mean, the real story was never even covered. It was just how Van Jones leaves the group. Anyhow, he wrote this brilliant book, and that's with a $120 contribution. With a $240 contribution, you get Van Jones's book. Plus, you get a new book called Citizen by Claudia Rankine. And if I'm saying her name right, my apologies to her if I'm saying it wrong, it's R-A-N-K-I-N-E. The book is Citizen, and you know, about the politics of our day. And that's with a $240 gift. You get the bumper sticker, the calendar, Van Jones's book, and Claudia's book. And with a $360 gift, you get all those things, right? The bumper sticker, the calendar, Van Jones's book, Claudia's book, plus you get my book, Unequal Protection. Now, we've offered that before, so if you already have a copy, hey, guess what? It's the holiday season, and it's a great gift. It's not a political screed. Unequal Protection is a book that your conservative uncle can read and probably agree with 95% of it. So that's the collection of gifts. Plus, with a $1,000 contribution, come to Portland, Oregon, or when Louise and I are here in Washington, D.C., come to D.C., and I'll take you out to lunch. And so that's the spectrum of gifts we have here in exchange for contributions, or not in exchange, in thanks and recognition of contributions. But most important, it's Free Speech TV itself. It's this extraordinary platform that's giving voice to people that the corporate media in America really doesn't want to talk about, topics that they don't want to talk about, even people that they don't. You know, how often do you see Our Revolution on MSNBC or CNN? I mean, it's almost like the media has decided anybody who's really progressive we don't want to have anything to do with. We've got to have middle-of-the-road Democrats and right-wing Republicans. It's crazy. So please call now to support this network and keep it alive. 877-378-8669. Please call now. Thank you.
TV.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and picking up your phone. I'm, here. We're live in Washington D.C. this week and having a fine old time. And Kevin in Suffolk, Virginia. Hey, Kevin. Thanks for listening to Sirius XM. What's on your mind today?
Yes. Good morning.
Hey, Kevin.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I was calling because I'm curious. I've been watching the news, and they're saying that a president cannot be convicted while sitting in office of high crimes and misdemeanors. So I'm asking the question: Is this all for nothing that Mueller is doing? If Flynn have a lot of information to give to Mueller, is it that there's nothing can be done once all this stuff come out? And also the second question: if something does come out about if something comes out about that is chargeable offense, do you think the Republicans will call for articles of impeachment? Just say if they get there, I'm not saying it will. Do you think that they're that afraid of Donald Trump with 33% rating that they won't, with all the information they get, would they stand up for country over party? And do we have to wait and say if the Democrats, this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to go because I want to hear your comment. If the Democrats take the House, do they have to wait until, if that happens, I know it's hypothetical, to go forward with the process of articles of impeachment? I heard you say that the Democrats could take a chance on that, but I'm just saying if we flip the House, so if you can answer that question for me, I'll get off the phone and listen to you.
Okay, Kevin, thank you. To the best of my knowledge, this is how the system works: is that the president and many senior members of Congress and many members of Congress also, but in particular the president, have a certain level of what's referred to as sovereign immunity. But whether that extends to the president actually committing crimes, particularly before he was in office, because some of these allegations are coming from late December of last year. And for example, the Logan Act violations. The Logan Act is a law that was passed, as I recall, in like the 1790s or the 1810s or something. It's a real old law. And what they were concerned about back then was, Americans were constantly. First of all, you had about a third of America who had been opposed to the American Revolution to begin with and still wanted us to be part of England. And the founders and framers were very conscious of that in the early legislatures. So, probably by the time the Logan Act was passed, there was a broad consensus that this is America. But they were just, worried about anybody trying to go out and do foreign policy on behalf of the United States when the United States, when foreign policy is the province of the president, of the executive branch, the State Department. And so the law says that if you're engaging in foreign policy with a foreign government, you have broken the law. Now, the Logan Act, only 2 people have ever been prosecuted under the Logan Act in the 200 years it's been on the law books, and nobody's ever been convicted. But it looks like that's the big one that Kushner and Flynn, by talking to the Russian ambassador and saying don't overreact to the sanctions that President Obama's putting on you. Keep in mind, Barack Obama was president of the United States at the time that Mike Flynn was reaching out to the Russians and saying, don't freak out about the sanctions. So that's a fairly clear Logan Act violation for Flynn. If Trump ordered it, it's also a clear Logan Act violation for Trump. I'm very skeptical that they would prosecute him for this, particularly given the fact that nobody has ever been successfully prosecuted under this law. That's the biggest problem. Although the Supreme Court reaffirmed in 1981 in a case before the court that the Logan Act is still a viable thing. But the principal way that you hold the president accountable for pretty much anything is through the process of impeachment. And there is a conviction that happens in the United States Senate. Bill Clinton was not convicted. His conviction was short one vote. Same with Andrew Johnson in the 1860s. Abraham Lincoln's vice president. So it seems to me that the principal vehicle that we have to focus on would probably be impeachment. Now there's a third option too, that is not a criminal one, it's not a legal one, it's not using the courts, and that's the 25th Amendment. And that's if the vice president and the cabinet, or a majority of the cabinet, agree that the president is not capable of fulfilling his duties of office. That's the phrase in the 25th Amendment, as I recall. And if they agree on that, then they submit that to the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives votes on it, and boom, the president is gone, and the vice president becomes the president. So we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, we're in one of those points in time right now where we really don't know what Mueller has on these guys, or what he might still get. So there's still a ways to go, and let's just hang on. Jesse in Miami. Hey, Jesse. How are you today?
Hey, hi, Tom. Hey, I know you're familiar with the speech Bernie gave over the weekend, and he mentioned that this tax cut bill is equivalent to like a class war. So, with him saying that, to me, that's almost as relevant when he went to Wall Street and said greed is not good. He was like giving them a warning. And it seemed like they doubling down on it by pushing this tax cut through. So, is Bernie
that's only half of it.
Huh?
I'm sorry, Jesse. I'm sorry, finish your thought.
Yeah, no, I was saying, is Bernie doubling down by saying it's class war? You just had Cohen on with Our Revolution, and they still seem to be focused on the political move. I know everybody's, who know politics know that, political power comes through economical power, and power respects power. So if he's going to say these guys are doing class war, does that change the focus a little from being so strong on trying to get, politicians elected and start working more economically?
Well, I would love to see more discussions of, rational discussions of economics in our political dialogue. The problem is that's arguably what we're having right now with this Republican tax scam, and it's such a dishonest dialogue. As long as we have billionaires sponsoring front groups that run ads on television saying to average working people, you're going to get a tax break, and not informing them that even if you do get a tax break, it's going to go away in a few years because we've got to make permanent the tax cuts for the billionaires and for the big corporations. We just don't have an honest political dialogue, and I know you know this, Jesse, and I think that that's the biggest challenge. The other thing, the thing that's the most outrageous, though, is, speaking of Bernie Sanders, is that Bernie introduced legislation during the debate on the tax bill. He introduced an amendment to the tax bill that simply said, we commit, well, I don't have the language in front of me, but basically it was very straightforward. Nothing that we do in this tax bill is going to harm Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid in any way and may not be used to do so. Okay, basically it was like, we're putting a lockbox around Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Even though we're cutting revenue to the government, those programs won't suffer. So, the effect of that would have been that if the government was running a larger budget deficit, that they would have two choices. They could either they could either raise taxes, or they could cut spending in anything other than Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid, which probably means that they would go after the more obscure social safety net programs, which is what Republicans do, or maybe they would go after that $700 billion Pentagon budget. There's plenty of cash there. But in any case, Bernie put this amendment forward and said, if you guys are telling the truth, Donald Trump, when he was campaigning, he said, I'm going to tell you, everybody up on this platform is going to raise your taxes and pass that money along. Oh no, Bernie said everybody on this platform is going to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. That was the phrase. And he said, and I'm not. Donald Trump said that. I'm scrambling everything here. So Trump campaigned on, I'm not going to cut Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security. Bernie said, okay, prove it. You know, you guys, if you all agree with Trump, just put this amendment in there. And the Republicans voted it down and got defeated. So that's the problem, Jesse, and it's a real substantial problem. You know, that we've got to, I mean, this is just nuts. Johnny in Lamarck, Texas. Hey, Johnny, what's on your mind today?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hey, Johnny.
I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Anyway, given the dire situation we have in Asia, in particular the radiation problem in Japan, and then with North Korea, that situation that could escalate to nuclear release, and given the tendency towards Republican presidents, especially this current one, to engage in something like that in order to detract from his criminality in the White House, I think it would be a good suggestion to the Democrats in Washington for them to propose a bill that would make it unlawful for any president now or in the future to engage in unilateral military action of any type as long as one or more cabinet members or former cabinet members are under criminal investigation. And that would put the Republicans in a spot because they would then reveal that they really don't give a rat's rear about the country. They only care about themselves.
Yeah, the only problem is, what if, you know, the Secretary of Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, is being investigated for all the robo-signings he did to throw people out of their homes in California back when he ran that bank. He was considered the king of evictions. And in the middle of his investigation, North Korea sends a nuke to Los Angeles or something. I mean, the president has to be able to declare war. Congress has to be able to declare war. The president. But I get it. You're talking about unilateral actions, but we haven't had a declaration of war since World War II. So I don't know, Johnny. Let me think about that. We'll be right back.
To Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls right after this. And welcome back. John in Minneapolis watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I had read a very disturbing article by William Greider, What Killed the Democratic Party. It was in The Nation in the end of November here. And, I hope that, I wish that Larry Cohn was still there, because our revolution seems to be spearheading the change that people want in the party. And I think that we need to be really unified, or we're, not going to be successful in, turning what will be the biggest turnaround, and damage to the New Deal ever, done by a government, and that will be, the tax bill. And what disturbs me is, in this article, Senator Chuck Schumer said that for every blue-collar Democrat we lose, we'll pick up 2 moderate Republicans. That was one quote. And then, Nancy Pelosi insisting that Democrats are capitalists, when, I don't know, I've been a Democrat all my life and believe in the New Deal, and not, I don't support unbridled capitalism. This issue was, hopefully put to rest in 1936 by FDR, and here we are, in 2017, bringing back the country, back to 1900. This is, really, it's outrageous. I just wanted to ask you, what do you think is the best strategy to really turn this around? I'm, very concerned.
Yeah, we have to get everybody we know mobilized. If everybody watching this show right now called 3 people, even just once a week, and help wake them up, or help turn them on to progressive media that could help wake them up. We're building an army, right? It's happening all across the country. You heard what Larry said about our revolution. There's a lot of other great groups out there too, Progressive Democrats of America and others. I think we just need all hands on deck, and for everybody it's going to be different. Some people, you know, their most comfortable thing will be to go to drinking liberally and just get charged up, you know. Other people, they're going to want to run for Democratic precinct committee person. You know, some people are going to want to get out on the streets and carry signs. You know, we're all different, John, and we all have the, you know, different comfort levels. So, but we need all hands on deck right now. I mean, that's this. You're right. This tax bill is a vicious deconstruction of large chunks of the New Deal, and a lot of what Lyndon Johnson did and Democrats did since then. You know, things like, I mean, just letting students, you know, work for tuition like my son did, or just giving teachers a $250 tax deduction if they have to buy supplies for their schools. I agree it's kind of crazy that they should have to buy supplies for their schools, but until we change property tax funding for schools, that's going to continue in poor neighborhoods. And the Republicans are like, oh, we don't care. But they're adding a tax break if you're wealthy and you send your child to a private school. I mean, how crazy is that, John? John's not there anymore. But yeah, this is just totally nuts. I mean, it's just and we're the victims. Our country right now is a victim of not only Republicans lying to us, but also of media malpractice. We'll be back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Florence in Rainier, Washington. Hey, Florence, thanks for listening.
Hi
What's
there.
on your mind today?
I wanted to thank Larry and Our Revolution. I'm a co-founder of a local group, and Our Revolution helped us with phone calling and texting in these last elections. But what I wanted to talk about today is that Our Revolution is part of a coalition called Our Dream. And we have a unique opportunity to pass a Clean Dream Act that would provide permanent protection for undocumented youth. And the Republicans need Democratic votes in order to pass the year-end spending bill that keeps the government funded. And if we can pressure Democrats and Republicans who say they care about Dreamers to vote no on any spending bill that does not include the Dream Act, we can get it passed. So today, tomorrow, and through the week, there are actions happening all over the country. We've got them happening in Olympia, all over Washington State. And so you could go to actionnetwork.org/event and find an event that's happening near you as we stand up for the Dreamers.
That's great. Action, say it again, the website.
actionnetwork.org.
That's great. Florence, thanks so much for the heads up, and thank you for your participation in all these things. You are helping to save the world. I truly appreciate it. Armin in Bradenton, Florida. Hey, Armin, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, let me tell you how the billionaires and multimillionaires make millions the easy way.
How's that?
Well, first, if you're Mitt Romney, you have your junk bond fund that charges loan shark rates, invest in the financial system of Puerto Rico. Then you make a secret deal during the campaign with Trump to think of some means to bail it out, okay, and pay it all off so there's really no risk, and make exorbitant profits. And then here comes the hurricane, so then you package it up in the Puerto Rico relief bill, and Levitt, that's a holdout from Utah that's friends with Romney, he says to Trump, you're not going to get my vote last week unless you, put the tax cuts in so my buddy Mitt Romney and his loan shark gangsters can make millions and millions and millions of dollars off the debt and the taxpayers, and then maybe eventually cutting Social Security and Medicare to pay for it. And this is how the rich, the really rich in this country, and probably globally, steal millions and millions and millions and sometimes billions of dollars with the defense spending too. This is how the people on top stay on top by Congress and steal millions and billions by the semi-trailer truck full legally and lawfully.
Yeah.
This is how it works.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, and consider it just as a return on investment. And I've over the last couple of years, we've seen several instances where billionaires have talked about their return on investment by buying
40%.
politicians. And
40%.
yeah, oh no, 20% of what?
Pardon?
You said 20%. 20% of what?
No, 40%. At the very bottom is usually 40%. But like you said, when Bush was in and Obama was in, and it had those gyrations, and just like right before 9/11 when they shorted the market, there were people associated with Goldman Sachs. And it's amazing. My understanding is Trump has more Goldman Sachs members or former members in his administration than show up for a board meeting. And
yeah, well, it's certainly more than any other administration. But Armin, the point that I was trying to make, and thank you for the call, it's an excellent setup for it, is that if you look at the amount of money that went into the political world in the last election from just the Koch network. The Koch network, said that they were going to raise somewhere north of $800 million for the election, $0.8 billion. I'm not sure that anybody knows exactly what they raised, and we know that there's a lot of other billionaires involved, but let's say it was $1 billion in total that the billionaires threw into the last election, and on the Republican side. In exchange for that $1 billion, those Republicans, over a 10-year period, are getting a $5.5 trillion tax cut. $5.5 trillion in exchange for a purchase price for the politicians of $1 billion. Well, $1.5 trillion is 1,500 billion. So you spend $1 billion, you make back 1,500 billion. If I'm doing my math right, that's a 15,000% return on investment. Now, I don't know anybody in America who can put money in a bank, who can put money in the stock market, who can put money, there's even buying, like major tech stocks when they're going through a big explosion, you're not going to make a 15,000% return on your investment. A goods, in a real boom market, a good stock might make 15, 20%. 30%. If you were in on Apple early on, you made 100%, 200%, 300%. You might have made 1,000%. But 15,000% return on investment? You invest $1 billion, you get $1.5 trillion back? Buying politicians in the United States of America is the most profitable business in the world. And legitimate business. And it's only legitimate because the Supreme Court legalized it in 1976 and then amplified that legalization in 2010 with Citizens United. 76 was the case of Buckley versus Vallejo. And the reason why the tax form, the average Japanese spends less than 5 minutes filling out their taxes, or 15 minutes, I think it was. Fareed Zakaria was talking about this on Sunday. And the average person in Holland spends, 5, 10, 15 minutes. And the Scandinavian countries, Germany, the European countries, most Western countries, and not even Western, Japan too, most of these countries have very simple tax systems. Their tax code may only run a few hundred pages or a few thousand pages. Our tax code is 75,000 pages, and at least 73,000 of those pages were bought and paid for by billionaires and corporations. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
It's the second week of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive, and Free Speech TV needs you. I'm here in Washington, D.C., which is why it looks a little different and maybe sounds a little funny, but we're at the headquarters of Our Revolution, and we're going to be interviewing Larry Cohen, who's I believe the board chair, and Nina Moore, who is the Senator Nina, who is the president, as I recall, and it's going to be a great show. But the big point is, or it is a great show, I guess you're watching it right now. We pre-recorded this just before the show, but the big point is that when was the last time on, quote, commercial television you saw anybody go to a place like Our Revolution and just talk to the folks for a couple of hours and find out what's going on and what's the state of the real resistance in the United States and who's doing what and what it's turning into and all those kind of things? You're not going to hear that on network television. You're not going to hear that in the corporate media. Instead, you're going to get some dramatic pablum like, who's upset, who's unhappy, is Jared Kushner going to go to jail? Well, of course, we'll talk about whether he's going to go to jail, but that seems to be the only thing that they focus on, or Mike Flynn or whatever, is drama and sports. Who's ahead, who's behind, what's, like the Roy Moore race. They don't talk about Roy Moore's crazy views on things. They don't talk about the fact that in 2011 he co-authored an educational program for for-profit colleges that teaches that women should not be allowed to vote and should not be allowed to run for public office. That was in 2011. That was 6 years ago. Roy Moore co-authored a college course teaching that women should be excluded from the American body politic. Entirely excised. Have you heard that on the news? No, probably what you've heard is the polls, because that's all they do is sports. Here you get the real news. Is that worth something to you? Is it, again, only 2% of Free Speech TV viewers may ever make a contribution. If you're getting value from this program and this network, please call now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number, 877-378-8669. And if you call during our program, and that's pretty important, like call right now during this break, and they will be able to provide you with any of a series of premiums that we're offering. With a $30 contribution, you get a Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. Yeah, it's a bumper sticker, but $30, it's I realize for some people it's a lot of money, but for most Americans, that's something that's doable. That's, for a family, that's not even the cost of going out to dinner, $30. With a $60 contribution, you get a bumper sticker, plus the Free Speech TV 16-month calendar. With a $120 contribution, which you can spread out over a year at $10 a month if you want. With a $120 contribution, you get the bumper sticker and the calendar, plus you get Van Jones's new book, Beyond the Messy Truth. Van Jones is one of the real heroes of the progressive movement. He was President Barack Obama's energy czar, his green czar, until Breitbart and the Wall Street Journal and all these right-wing hysterics, I don't know specifically if it was the Journal, certainly Fox News, went after him. How dare that black man in the White House lecture us about how to use energy when we get money from the fossil fuel barons? And they politically destroyed Van Jones, or got rid of him. We got forced Obama to get him out of the White House. That's nuts. That's nuts. And it was never even really covered. I mean, the real story was never even covered. It was just how Van Jones leaves the group. Anyhow, he wrote this brilliant book, and that's with a $120 contribution. With a $240 contribution, you get Van Jones's book. Plus, you get a new book called Citizen by Claudia Rankine. And if I'm saying her name right, my apologies to her if I'm saying it wrong, it's R-A-N-K-I-N-E. The book is Citizen, and about the politics of our day. And that's with a $240 gift. You get the bumper sticker, the calendar, Van Jones's book, and Claudia's book. And with a $360 gift, you get all those things, right? The bumper sticker, the calendar, Van Jones's book, Claudia's book, plus you get my book, Unequal Protection. Now, we've offered that before, so if you already have a copy, hey, guess what? It's the holiday season, and it's a great gift. It's not a political screed. Unequal Protection is a book that your conservative uncle can read and probably agree with 95% of it. So that's the collection of gifts, plus with a $1,000 contribution. Come to Portland, Oregon, or when Louise and I are here in Washington, D.C., come to D.C., and I'll take you out to lunch. And so that's the spectrum of gifts we have here in exchange for contributions, or not in exchange, in thanks and recognition of contributions. But most important, it's Free Speech TV itself. It's this extraordinary platform that's giving voice to people that the corporate media in America really doesn't want to talk about, topics that they don't want to talk about, even people that they don't. You know, how often do you see Our Revolution on MSNBC or CNN? I mean, it's almost like the media has decided anybody who's really progressive, we don't want to have anything to do with. We've got to have middle-of-the-road Democrats and right-wing Republicans. It's crazy. So please call now to support this network and keep it alive. 877-378-8669. Please call now. Thank you.
TV.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. We're broadcasting live from the headquarters of Our Revolution in Washington, D.C. And in the studio with me today, actually, I'm in your office.
Yes.
in Nina Turner's office. I'm sitting at her desk. She's sitting in the guest desk. This is almost surreal.
But fun.
Nina Turner, former Ohio State Senator, former Bernie 2016 surrogate, and now the president of Our Revolution. Nina, it's so nice to have you with us again.
So nice to have you with us, Thom Hartmann.
This
is beautiful.
Yeah, it is great. So the work that you've been doing with Our Revolution, Larry gave us a little bit of an update on what's going on, but I'd love to hear it from your point of view. Where is the organization at? And you know, of course, Larry had more to say about the Democratic Party. He just came from a Democratic meeting or whatever. But what are y'all up to, and what's next?
I mean, 2017 was a great year for us at Our Revolution in terms of the candidates across the spectrum that we were able to get elected to office. Particularly, as you know, 2017 is more of a focus on local level offices and also state legislatures. But just wonderful. I mean, so our entire slate in Somerville won, to how we were able to lift our candidates in Virginia to the representatives that won there. And the thing is, it was the tale of the people, the grassroots people that were running, people like Elizabeth Guzman and others, who is, you know, one of two Latinas to ever serve, you know, in the House in Virginia on the state level. It's just absolutely fascinating. But it was the tale of that grassroots energy that helped the gubernatorial candidate and not the other way around.
In Virginia.
And in Virginia. And I believe we're going to see that all across the country, that the more people are excited, not just about who's serving in Congress, not just who's the president, although that matters a whole lot, especially we're understanding that, but also who is running for school board, who's running for city council, and who's running for the state legislature. That's where we lost the most ground as Democrats over the last 8 years, those 1,100 seats. A lot of those came from state level, whether it's statewide offices or the legislature.
Well, and some of that probably was a consequence of the of the Koch network and some of the other big funders just starting to pour money. I mean, just in the last 5-6 years, they've been pouring money into state level organizations.
That's right, Tom.
They created, you know, a local version of ALEC.
They did, but were they focused for 8 years? We did not. I mean, those who are Democrats or Democratic leaning, and I'm talking about leadership, I'm not talking about the grassroots folks, just kind of said, we got the White House, you know, we had the Congress for that first 2 years, but no focus and no investment on the state legislatures and also governors' mansions and secretary of states and those other statewide offices that really matter when you're trying to create a progressive America.
Yeah.
But we can turn that around, though. In our revolution, we're doing our part.
So at our revolution, there's obviously the federal stuff.
Yes.
You know, let's take back Congress.
Yes,
you know,
2018.
Take the House, take
yeah.
the Senate. We've got to do this because we've got, I mean, this tax scam that the Republicans are running is not just about taxes, it's about deconstructing. I mean, the New York Times was running a headline a couple days ago about, you know, what's up next, Social Security and Medicare, because they're going to play, Judah Wanniski laid this out back in 1977, I think it was. He wrote a paper called The Two Santa Clauses.
Oh, wow.
And what he said was that for the last 40, 50 years, the Democrats had been Santa Claus. They gave us Social Security, unemployment benefits, all these other things, and the Republicans were always Scrooge. And he said, so the Republican Party has to learn how to become Scrooge and force the Democrats to shoot Santa, their Santa. And he said the way to do this is when Republicans are in office, run up huge debts, and do it through tax cuts so that the Republican Party is known as the Santa Claus of tax cuts. And then once the Democrats come into power, scream about the debts and force them to shoot their Santa of Social Security. And they're already, I mean, Marco Rubio over the weekend was talking about, you know, next is, we got to look at the structural problems of Social Security and Medicare.
But that's everything. Senator Sanders has been saying that, and as you highlighted in a previous segment about the amendment he tried to get the Republicans to agree to, and I hope that all Republican voters see that when it comes to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the viability of you as an individual, your family, your community, that this is no longer about your political affiliation, that there is a clear delineation, that these folks were not even willing, the GOP-controlled Congress was not even willing to say, we will protect Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. That this is a power grab, it's a flat-out money grab, taking our tax dollars and giving it, just giving it and sacrificing everybody along with it, the working poor and middle class, for the benefit of the ultra wealthy in this country. And speaking of that time, you know, Senator Sanders and I were just on tour, the Working Families Tour, hosted by MoveOn.org, fabulous organization. It was so nice to partner with them, and also Tax March. It was just wonderful. We went to Louisville, Kentucky. I was told Louisville. There's a certain way you got to pronounce that. Yeah. That's where we started, but the senator was not there physically because he was fighting for the people on the floor of the Senate. And then we went to 2 cities in Ohio, Dayton and in Akron, and we ended up in Reading, Pennsylvania yesterday afternoon. Over 1,300 people at every stop. The largest crowd was at Reading, in Reading, Pennsylvania. Over 1,600, I should have said, I hope I said 1,300 people at every stop, those cities, and then 1,600 people on a Sunday afternoon during football season, Tom. Imagine that.
Wow.
1,600 people in Reading, Pennsylvania. And you know, I want your listeners and viewers to know a fun fact there, which is that during the presidential 2016, Senator Sanders won that county where Reading sits, and then Mr. Trump won it during the general by 10%. So Senator we're going to places that lean red, but where people want to know that they're going to be elected officials and others standing up for them and their families. Just absolutely mind-blowing. You know, Senator talked about politics a lot. About politics is about life and death. This is real. And that is really what the message was, is that we're fighting for justice and we're fighting for decency, and we need the people to rise up.
Yeah. The amazing thing, apropos of that, is I knew, we used to live in a marina down here in D.C. We still have a boat down there, and it's where we're staying while we're in town. And a lot of the people down there are military or retired military, and I knew a bunch. I mean, you know, 6, 7, 8. I'd have to go through a list of guys, men and women, who we knew quite well, who had probably never voted Democratic in their lives. They just identified as Republicans, who were enthusiastic Bernie supporters.
Yes.
And then when he lost the primary, they voted, to the best of my knowledge, every single one of them voted for Donald Trump.
Wow.
And this is not a knock on Hillary Clinton. It's a comment about the moment. This is the moment of the outsider. This is the moment. People get it, that the political process has been so badly corrupted by money, thanks to the Supreme Court and Citizens United, that they are just desperate for a candidate who says, I don't need the damn money, which is what Trump was saying.
That's right. Absolutely. And the senator made that point brilliantly when he said, look, I don't begrudge people who voted for Mr. Trump. And obviously the audience got worked out. He said, worked up. He said, wait a minute now, don't boo. He said, you had somebody who said one thing as a candidate and doing another thing as the president. He said, we're going to go after pharmaceutical companies, but he's doing a whole nother thing. He said, I'm going to protect you. He's doing a whole nother thing. So rationally, you could understand. And he said, but we have to hold him accountable for what candidate Trump said and what President Trump is actually doing. And I think that is the way to go. This time we have become, we've picked our teams, but we're doing it in a way that erases other people's humanity. And that's where I think we have to draw a line. Now, if somebody's a flat-out racist, flat-out sexist, we know that when we see it. Charlottesville, that's one example. But to look down or to talk negatively against people who voted for Mr. Trump based on what he promised is not the way we bring ourselves together as a country. It just reminds me of what Dr. King said when he said that he said darkness can't drive out darkness, only light can, and hate can't drive out hate, only love can. We have to focus in on the issues that unite us. And this tax bill, I said trickle down is a trick.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Nina Turner with us. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of Nina Turner, president of Our Revolution. And welcome back. Nina Turner, president of Our Revolution, is here with us. If I were living in Des Moines, Iowa, or Minneapolis or whatever, and I was to show up at an Our Revolution office and say, "Here I am," what would my experience be?
We would welcome you, first of all.
Well, thank you.
Now, not all of our affiliates have offices. These are grassroots-run organizations. So they may or may not have an office. They might have meeting places because it's really fueled by the grassroots. But I can give you an example place in my hometown of Cleveland, Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus that is there, and they actually do have an office. As a matter of fact, they had the first volunteer-funded office for Senator Sanders' campaign in the United States.
Wow!
In Lakewood, in Lakewood, Ohio. I'm from Cleveland, but in Lakewood, which is a suburb of Cleveland, the first one in the country. And then they converted that to the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus. So if you go there, you would be welcomed. You would be asked what are the issues that you care the most about within our platform, and then tasked to help and to work on those issues. So for example, that OR affiliate worked on Fight for 15, trying to get that pushed in Cleveland, Ohio. They endorsed candidates, but it would be about putting people within the revolution working on the issues they care about. So if it's climate, if it's economics, if it's social justice, criminal justice, whatever that is, choice, right? We need you to work on those issues that get your blood boiling, because all of it though is working towards the whole, creating a progressive America, one community at a time.
Yeah, and how best to share the word, not just about Our Revolution, but also I had a caller. You probably heard it in the last half hour, who was like, "What do I do?" And my advice was find a group that you feel comfortable with, whether it's drinking liberally or whether it's Our Revolution or the DNC itself. But
I totally agree with that, and I want them to visit. I mean, of course, as president of Our Revolution, I must say, Our Revolution, we need you to join Our Revolution. But seriously, go to ourrevolution.com. We have a map on our website where folks can see where chapters already exist. We have over 500 right now. But you can even create a chapter of your own. But, larger to your point, find a cause, find an organization, find something that moves you. mentally and spiritually, and volunteer your time. Because this is really about all hands on deck. We are in a transition moment where the sleeping giants are awakening, and we want people to work on and fight for those issues that they really believe in. There are a plethora of organizations all across this country doing the work that when together, you know, there's a proverb that says that many hands make for light work, and that's really what we need. We need many hands on deck for this tremendous work that we have ahead of us as a nation and as a world.
In psychotherapy, there is a kind of conventional wisdom notion that one of the best ways to deal with people who are experiencing anxiety or depression is to find them something that they're enthusiastic about to do.
Yeah.
Here's your opportunity.
Amen.
If you're struggling
of work
with all the crap that's going on in the world,
yes,
here you go.
Do.
Just sign up for our revolution.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. We're going to hit this break in about 10 seconds, but you guys have such a great organization here.
Thank you.
I'm so pleased to be here with you. Hang on just a second. We're hitting a break. We'll be back with more of Nina Turner, president of Our Revolution, former state senator from Ohio, right after this.
Hi, I'm Heather with Free Speech TV. Your support, whether through giving of donations, volunteering, or even spreading the word, has made it possible for the only independent progressive news network to sustain for more than 20 years. Now, you can give to Free Speech TV through the Branch of Gratitude. This program is a sustainable way to give that reduces waste through paper mailing, postage, and staff hours. By choosing to participate in the Branch of Gratitude, you are joining hands with the socially conscious community and sending a message to the world that Free Speech TV is not only here to stay, it is here to thrive. Please call 877-378-8669 or go online to freespeech.org. Make a difference and join the Branch of Gratitude today.
Because I left my beats at home. We're back with Nina Turner, the president of Our Revolution, and the tax. Well, we've been talking about the tax scam. I love the fact that basically you say anything that's in the Democratic Party, if that's what rings your bell, you can jump on it. But is Our Revolution as an institution right now focusing? What's your hierarchy of priorities?
Progressive candidates and progressive causes. You know, we are not, this is not about the Democratic Party, even though we have a transform the party or party building component to our work, but it is candidates and it is issues. Because one of the most important things in the progressive movement, I think that sometimes we forget, is that in order to create a progressive America, we do have to do it one community at a time, but we have to win the seats. Because the power, politics really is about power, and it doesn't have to be the ugly side of power. So to the extent that we can get progressives elected, like a Randall Woodfin, who is now mayor in Birmingham, Alabama, or a Lumumba, who's mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, or an Elizabeth Guzman, who is, you know, state rep-elect in Virginia, the more we can multiply that across the country is the way that we can get $15 an hour, a way we can get a commitment on the state level, local level, and hopefully in the Congress for, you know, college for all. So we have to understand that we have to win back the power and use that power, not to the detriment of the people like the GOP are doing, and some establishment Dems have done, but to use that power to benefit the people that you are serving through public policy.
And that's, I mean, that's the idea of America.
That is the ideal of America. That oversized, you know, when you talk about Citizens United and other Supreme Court, it was already bad before they did that, but now it's even worse. And so we got to remind the people, because people are heavy, Tom. I mean, that's what I found, you know, traveling. I've been to 12 states in the last 60 days, not counting my tour with the senator over the weekend. People are heavy, and they have a right to be heavy, but I still want them to be hopeful. Because once we lose hope, we lose our urge and our energy and our enthusiasm for working towards what can be better. So it's all right to be heavy and angry in this moment, but I want people to channel that anger and that righteous indignation to get the change that they need. These really are heavy times. I mean, I met a mom in Louisville whose son has congestive heart failure, and you know, she had tears in her eyes saying that not only was it hard for her to get health insurance for her son, but she said she couldn't even get life insurance for her son. He's 10 years old. Think about how cruel that is.
That's insane. That's insane. Apropos of our revolution, I think in some people's minds, they think of our revolution as basically the extension of the Bernie campaign. This is Bernie's thing. But if Bernie were to, God forbid, go away one way or another tomorrow morning.
Yeah, God forbid.
Yeah. What would happen? I mean, to what extent is our revolution an extension of the Bernie movement versus has taken on a life of its own as one of the major leaders in the new emerging progressive movement?
I mean, that's what the senator, that last statement, that's what he wanted. You know, he's always said, this is not about me. He said that this weekend when he talked about the work of our revolution and his work, but he said it's not about me, Bernie Sanders, it's not about Nina Turner, but it's about all of you. He said that as a candidate too. And you know, our slogan is, campaigns end, but revolutions endure. And this is about building legacy generation after generation after generation. And to have someone like Senator Sanders who understands that his creation, yes, it was his vision, he created this, but that it is bigger than him and that it will outlive him, because we want that next generation to pick up the mantle to continue to push, because there's always going to be an assignment for each generation to push social justice for the next. And that is what our revolution is about, very much in the spirit of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King with the Poor People's, you know, Poor People's Movement, who Reverend Barber has picked up that and has a Poor People's Movement. But this is so much bigger than the senator. That's what he would say.
Yeah.
Has said too.
Yeah. So, are you? Somebody called and said that our revolution is part of an alliance of other progressive groups. How is our revolution working with other progressive groups?
I mean, we're doing that. One of our callers, I think one of our affiliates called about, you know, joining the fight for our dreamers right now, which we have going on, so people can go there, join the fight for our, jointhefightforourdreamers.com, or they can go to our revolution website, but we're doing that in collaboration with other groups. We work a lot with MoveOn.org, Democracy for America, you know, National Nurses United. Because even though we're an organization, we can't do it by ourselves either. And so we need other progressive organizations where we join and fight for issues. Even the People's Platform, the Summer for Progress, that was a collaboration. Even though we were the lead, it was a collaboration, the first among equals, so to speak, because I believe in that. But we were the lead in creating the People's Platform and pushing that through, calling it the Summer of Progress. So it is vitally important that no matter how important the organization thinks that they are, you can never do this alone. And we are fortunate that in this particular time in our nation's history, the uprising, if you will, of progressive organizations, both big and small, they're everywhere and more are being created. And to me, again, that shows that the sleeping giants across this country, they are awakening and they are using their power to push back.
Remarkable. And I think you're absolutely right. And I think we're going to hit a break here, or we're going to hit the end of the segment actually in 15-20 seconds. Real quickly, there's the music. If somebody wants to join, ourrevolution.com.
Ourrevolution.com. Right? Yes,
there you go.
Join. Be a part.
Please
of the
participate.
revolution.
Nina Turner, the great Nina Turner, and so pleased to have you with us. And thank you for letting us use your office.
Anytime.
It's a pleasure.
Anytime, Thom Hartmann.
Nina Turner, we love you.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And I'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. It's the second week of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive, and Free Speech TV needs you. I'm here in Washington, D.C., which is why it looks a little different and maybe sounds a little funny, but we're at the headquarters of Our Revolution, and we're going to be interviewing Larry Cohen, who's I believe the board chair, and Nina Moore, who is the Senator Nina, who is the president, as I recall, and it's going to be a great show, but big point is, or it is a great show, I guess you're watching it right now. We pre-recorded this just before the show, but the big point is that when was the last time on, quote, commercial television you saw anybody go to a place like Our Revolution and just talk to the folks for a couple of hours and find out what's going on and what's the state of the real resistance in the United States and who's doing what and what it's turning into and all those kind of things? You're not going to hear that on network television. You're not going to hear that in the corporate media. Instead, you're going to get some dramatic pablum like, you know, who's upset, who's unhappy, you know, is Jared Kushner going to go to jail? Well, of course, we'll talk about whether he's going to go to jail, but that seems to be the only thing that they focus on, you know, or Mike Flynn or whatever, is drama and sports. Who's ahead, who's behind, you know, what's, like the Roy Moore race. You know, they don't talk about Roy Moore's crazy views on things. They don't talk about the fact that in 2011 he co-authored an educational program for for-profit colleges that teaches that women should not be allowed to vote and should not be allowed to run for public office. That was in 2011. That was 6 years ago. Roy Moore co-authored a college course teaching that women should be excluded from the American body politic. Entirely excised. Have you heard that on the news? No, probably what you've heard is the polls, because that's all they do is sports. Here you get the real news. Is that worth something to you? Is it, I mean, again, only 2% of Free Speech TV viewers may ever make a contribution. If you're getting value from this program and this network, please call now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number, 877-378-8669. And if you call during our program, and that's, you know, pretty important, like call right now during this break, and you know, they will be able to provide you with any of a series of premiums that we're offering. With a $30 contribution, you get a Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. Yeah, it's a bumper sticker, but $30, you know, it's I realize for some people it's a lot of money, but for most Americans, that's something that's doable. That's, you know, for a family, you know, that's not even the cost of going out to dinner. $30. With a $60 contribution, you get a bumper sticker, plus the Free Speech TV 16-month calendar. With a $120 contribution, which you can spread out over a year at $10 a month if you want. With a $120 contribution, you get the bumper sticker and the calendar, plus you get Van Jones's new book, Beyond the Messy Truth. Van Jones is one of the real heroes of the progressive movement. He was President Barack Obama's energy czar, his green czar, until, you know, Breitbart and the Wall Street Journal and all these right-wing hysterics, I don't know specifically if it was the Journal, certainly Fox News, went after him. How dare that black man in the White House lecture us about how to use energy when we get money from the fossil fuel barons? And they you know, politically destroyed Van Jones, or got rid of him. We got, you know, forced Obama to get him out of the White House. That's nuts. That's nuts. And it was never even really covered. I mean, the real story was never even covered. It was just how Van Jones leaves the group. Anyhow, he wrote this brilliant book, and that's with a $120 contribution. With a $240 contribution, you get Van Jones's book. Plus, you get a new book called Citizen by Claudia Rankine. And if I'm saying her name right, my apologies to her if I'm saying it wrong, it's R-A-N-K-I-N-E. The book is Citizen, and you know, about the politics of our day. And that's with a $240 gift. You get the bumper sticker, the calendar, Van Jones's book, and Claudia's book. And with a $360 gift, you get all those things, right? The bumper sticker, the calendar, Van Jones's book, Claudia's book, plus you get my book, Unequal Protection. Now, we've offered that before, so if you already have a copy, hey, guess what? It's the holiday season, and it's a great gift. It's not a political screed. Unequal Protection is a book that your conservative uncle can read and probably agree with 95% of it. So that's the collection of gifts, plus with a $1,000 contribution, come to Portland, Oregon, or when Louise and I are here in Washington, D.C., come to D.C., and I'll take you out to lunch. And so that's the spectrum of gifts we have here in exchange for contributions, or not in exchange, in thanks and recognition of contributions. But most important, it's Free Speech TV itself. It's this extraordinary platform that's giving voice to people that the corporate media in America really doesn't want to talk about, topics that they don't want to talk about, even people that they don't. You know, how often do you see Our Revolution on MSNBC or CNN? I mean, it's almost like the media has decided anybody who's really progressive, we don't want to have anything to do with. We've got to have middle-of-the-road Democrats and right-wing Republicans. It's crazy. So please call now to support this network and keep it alive. 877-378-8669. Please call now. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Heather with Free.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and we're broadcasting live from the headquarters of Our Revolution in Washington, D.C. And let's pick up some of your calls here. Mike in Richmond, Illinois. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind today?
Yes, Tom, I wanted to know how the GOP tax plan is going to further kids into debt, and how it might even pop the college debt bubble.
It's going to explode college debt. Well, you know, it's hard to know because sometimes you get these unintended consequences. By making it very difficult for graduate students to work for their tuition, basically. Now they get taxed even though they don't get any money. And by making the interest on student loans no longer tax deductible, it may have the effect of causing lots and lots of people to say, no, we don't want to go to college. We can't afford to go to college. We're going to get, you know, basically screwed by the powers that be, and you know, why bother? So I just, you know, we're just going to have to wait and see, I guess, Mike, because, you know, whether it's going to be a you know, a bunch of graduate students and everybody else getting screwed, or whether it's going to be, you know, I just don't know. But they're throwing a significant monkey wrench in the works, Mike. So I guess that's the bottom line. Mike, thanks for the call. Sam in, I don't have a city for you, Sam. Where are you calling from?
Ann Arbor.
Hey, our old stomping grounds. What's up?
I was wondering what you thought of my theory of President Trump and Vladimir Putin being tricked by President Obama by using child psychology on him. What I mean is, in front of the fireplace, when he's telling them that Mike Flynn has been compromised, he could have told them that the guy was okay and hire him, but instead he told them the truth. And out of 300+ million people in the United States, he decides to hire Mike Flynn. When he does that, now we find out that there is stuff going on with Russia. Even Republican-friendly communist Republicans are not going to dare take these sanctions off, and the sanctions are going to get worse. And this, again, tricked Putin, which is a hard guy. It's easy to trick Trump, but it's hard to trick Putin. Now, Putin is behind the 8 ball real bad, and I think Obama's legacy is going to go on and on and on. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's... I don't disagree with most of your analysis, Sam. I think that you know, Putin's facing elections next year, and there is, in fact, there's a new candidate who just proclaimed him or herself, it might be a woman, setting up offices all over Russia. I mean, who knows who played whom, but it's increasingly looking pretty grim and for these guys. And I'm waiting for the actual evidence. There is some substantial evidence out there, but the real smoking guns have yet to emerge, and I have a feeling they're going to come out of this investigation. Bill in in 9 Mile Falls, Wisconsin. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. My question is on this GOP tax bill that got passed on Saturday. All the handwritten margins in the corner I watch a lot of news. Who put those in there? Was it a staffer? Was it a senator? Was it a lobbyist?
I would be amazed if a senator, I read the margins, at least 1 or 2 pages of the margins, you know, the one that was floating around the New York Times over the weekend. And senators don't get their hands dirty by picking up ballpoint pens and doing that. You know, they would, plus, it has to be written in a way that is legally accurate and acceptable. I mean, it's going to become legislation. So certainly it was probably a staffer who used to be a lobbyist for whoever's getting the tax break that they're writing in there. But it's not inconceivable at all, given that most of the tax bill, you know, most of the legislation being passed these days, generally speaking, is written by lobbyists. And then, you know, just handed, or groups like ALEC, and then handed to a legislator who simply puts their name on it. In fact, sometimes they even forget to take the names of the lobbyist or ALEC or whatever off the legislation. So I'm not sure who wrote those margin notes, Bill, but you know, this is the really sad part of it. And Bill, thank you for the call. The really sad part about it is Susan Collins. I mean, Susan Collins, Mitch McConnell came to her, or this is exactly, in my mind anyway, how it played out, and I'm guessing I'm right, you know, knowing what I know about how this town works. Mitch McConnell went to Susan Collins and basically said, okay, Susan, or Senator, we need your vote. What do you want in exchange for it? And she said something to the effect of, well, you know, we've got people in Maine who pay property taxes, and those are state taxes or local taxes. And under this legislation, they won't be able to deduct them from their taxes. And most working people are paying less than $10,000 a year in taxes. I mean, you got to have a very, very expensive house, particularly in Maine, to be paying $10,000 in taxes. So if we did a $10,000 threshold and everybody could deduct it, then you know, I think that'll make Maine happy. And so McConnell threw that in. But then, you know, it's like, really? You want to do that, but people won't be able to deduct their state income taxes? Which is going to kneecap Maine. I'm assuming Maine has an income tax. It may be one of the half a dozen states that doesn't, but I don't think so. And you know, in localities, municipalities, town taxes, things like that. I have yet to hear about the deductibility of municipal bonds or state bonds, but so I'm guessing they're not doing away with that, because I think if they were, you know, basically the colleges, and anybody who's got a trust fund would be freaking out, any of these institutions. But anyhow, I thought that was really sad. Susan Collins has been a hero a few times, or a heroine, and or I guess hero is now the gender neutral term. And it's so sad to see her. I mean, Louise and I had dinner, what was it, the night before last, Louise, right? And with a couple of friends of ours who have a home in Maine. And they keep a boat here in DC, and they go back and forth. And they had just come back from Maine. And they were telling us that the Mainers that they know, the people from Maine, and they're just average folks who live in an average community in Maine, are furious. And it wasn't just the liberals. I mean, everybody is upset right now with Susan Collins. So I don't know. I have a feeling that there's a whole bunch of polling going on right now, because this bill has now been sent to committee for reconciliation between the House and Senate. And if the House decides that they can go along with the Senate bill as passed, because we already know the Senate won't go along with the House bill. If the House decides they'll go along with the Senate bill, there's not even going to need to be another vote on this thing. They'll simply say, okay, that's it, we'll take the Senate bill, and boom, off it goes to the president for his signature. On the other hand, you know, there might be a battle. So we're going to have to wait and see what comes out of it all. But what we know so far is that this is not really just a tax bill. This is a major rewrite of the entire American social safety net. And it's setting the stage for, as Marco Rubio pointed out a couple days ago, it's setting the stage for the Republicans to say, you know, our deficits are now, you know, just expanded by $1 trillion. This is terrible. We can't saddle our grandchildren with $1 trillion in debt. We have to cut Social Security and Medicare. And I started to say I predict that that's going to be next. I promise you that's going to be next. The holy grail of republicanism since 1935 has been destroy Social Security. It is socialism. We don't like it. Nate in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, Nate, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thanks so much for taking my call. I've been listening to for probably 15 or 20 years here in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
And thanks to your tagline of Tag Your Ad, I'm running for city council, so I'm very excited about that.
Good on you, Nate.
Yeah, I'm very excited. And I want to let you know I'm having a lot of fun. I want to get other people to get out there and run as well. One of the things that Santa Fe did about 4 or 5 years ago is come up with a public financing law. So all I had to do was go around to my neighbors, 150 of them, and get $5 contributions. And today I'm going to pick up a check for $15,000 from the city to run a campaign through March 6th. It's not a lot of money. We'll be doing mostly volunteer energy, but it's very, very exciting. So I want to let you know about that. And also today in Santa Fe, for any Santa Fe listeners, there's an important hearing at 2:30 about ranked choice voting, which the city passed by referendum almost 10 years ago, with 65% of the vote going for ranked choice voting or instant runoff voting. And the city has dragged its heels on it for all these 10 years. And we could actually get it. A judge has actually said that the city has to go along with ranked choice voting, and the city might still back off on it and take it to the Supreme Court. So I'm encouraging any Santa Fe listeners to get down to City Hall today at 2:30.
2:30 City Hall. Yeah, we got a lot of listeners to KTRC there in Santa Fe, so hopefully they will. People will show up. Nate, if you don't mind, and again, whenever I ask a personal question, and to anybody who's calling, just feel free to say none of your damn business. But I'm curious, when you decided that you were going to run for political office, what was your experience like? Like when you went to presumably the DNC and Mike. Nate, can you do it in 10 seconds, Nate?
Yeah, that's been part of my life to be involved in politics, and it just was a natural progression in my life, in addition to all your great encouragement.
So you just show up and they say, great, we'll help. That is spectacular. Nate, thanks so much for the call, and good luck on your campaign, and thanks for the heads up on the meeting this afternoon in Santa Fe. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
More of your calls and the news of the day right after this. And welcome back. Let's see here. Jim, watching Free Speech TV in Nashville, Tennessee. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. I was hoping to talk to Miss Turner because way back in August, I called you and asked Nina if she would come to Tennessee, and she said, just check. Well, we're hoping that Nina's coming to Tennessee in February. So we've got chapters all across the state. If people in Tennessee or in the surrounding states want to find out when Nina's coming, just find a chapter in either Chattanooga or Knoxville or Nashville or Memphis, and then come join the party. We're hoping to take Tennessee and make it the next Virginia and just flip this dead red state into some version of blue somehow, and we think Nina can generate a little bit of energy and get us going. So that's it.
That's spectacular. She's not in the office right now. I can't speak to her schedule or what she's doing. But I will see her when the show's over, and I'll mention to her that you called if she doesn't already know. I know a couple of people from our Revolution here are watching the show or listening to the show, so maybe she already got the message, Jim, but I will pass it along. Thanks a lot for the call. Angelo in New Orleans. Hey, Angelo, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Professor Hartmann, and thank you for taking my call. I just want to, I'm really burned up about this guy, this Project Veritas. His first victim was my state senator, Senator Mary Landrieu, where he represented himself and his crew as a telephone company. He was arrested for that. He was sent to jail.
Right. He was trying to wiretap their offices or something like that.
Okay. Also, he is being funded by the Koch brothers, $1.7 million.
And by Donald Trump.
If he is arrested and found guilty again, can the Koch brothers be held responsible for his actions as they financed him?
That's an interesting question. If you hire somebody to kill somebody, you're as guilty of the murder as the killer is, although odds are you'd get a slightly less severe sentence, but still, you know, you're looking at life in prison or maybe even the death penalty. If you hire somebody to break a less consequential law, like wiretapping in Mary Landrieu's office, because they were trying to bug her office, basically, it was my recollection of it anyway. I don't know if that same pass-through responsibility to the people who put them up to it essentially exists, number one. And number two, it's entirely possible that not just the Kochs, I mean, Donald Trump's foundation has given 3 $10,000 gifts and some smaller gifts to James O'Keefe and Project Veritas. It's not inconceivable that if O'Keefe never specifically told them what he was going to do, if he never said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna wiretap Mary Landrieu and we're gonna, you know, whatever," because that's the thing that they got busted and convicted of. If he never told them, then they may have a defense of, you know, that's not what we gave him the money for, or we didn't know. I'm not a criminal lawyer. I don't know the details of exactly how that would work. But it's an interesting question, Angelo. It's a very interesting question, one I frankly had not considered. And but it's in my brain now. I'll keep an eye out and we'll report back here. Angelo, thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for watching Free Speech TV. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Ellen Ratner's new book, Loving What You Do. On the line with us, Bob Ney of Talk Media News. Hey, Bob. No Bob Ney? I should add, by the way, that Bob is the former Republican congressman from Ohio and the author of Sideswiped, which is the book that you want to read if you want to know how this town works. Bob, you there?
Yes, Tom. I'm here.
Hey,
something's happened with Skype, unfortunately.
Oh yeah. Well, we don't use Skype audio on the air because it's so unreliable. We always use.
I am so sorry. I've been rusty here. I'm sorry, Tom. Okay, I'm here.
That's quite all right. So what's going on, Bob?
Well, let's talk to tax or not to tax and how it works out. First of all, to the prediction level, I can promise you a conversation has been made between Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader of the Senate, and Speaker Ryan, where Mitch McConnell says, take it right as it is and send it to the president, because I passed it 51-49, and he doesn't have much room to maneuver. And, of course, with that tight vote, Tom, I can tell you, too, that we're going to eventually read this bill because no one knows what's really in it. And we're going to eventually read this bill and find out what was given non-tax related to the Hawk members who thought this was driving up the deficit, but they turned around and voted for it. So there's going to be some sweeteners into this bill. There's already something we know on immigration for Senator Flake, just not sure, completely right now what it is.
Well, they got Cory Gardner's fetal personhood thing in there. You're now under this legislation considered a human being at conception.
I guess they're going to relate that to eventually they pay tax. I don't know, So
yeah,
there's going to be all kinds of
things. That's it. Tax deduction. Yeah.
Right, and but the point of the bill too is that in the process-wise, before I get into some particulars, but because there's definitely winners and losers, but also the point to the process. If in fact Paul Ryan in the House cannot accept this bill as it is, I promise you one of the fastest, very controlled conference committees in the last 20 to 30 years will occur, because there's no room to maneuver on this. The Republicans, as you know, and as they know, have had 0 wins since Trump became the President of the United States. 0.
Well, Bob, but no. They did pass a piece of legislation. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe this was a federal policy, but I thought they passed a law that said that coal companies no longer had to dispose of their toxic waste. They could simply take a dump truck to a river and dump it into the river.
Right, and so they have had, again, nothing substantive.
So they have one accomplishment. Yeah, you're right.
It's a benefit to humans.
So what you're talking about here, the net of what you're talking about is if the conferees from the House of Representatives say, okay, we will now go along with the Senate bill complete. We'll just take the Senate bill. Then boom, it doesn't have to be voted on again by either House of Congress. It goes right to the President. On the other hand, if they report out something that is an amalgam of both the House and Senate, it has to be voted on by both bodies again?
Yes, what will happen is the bill will come up on the floor, the House says yes or no, or they move to confer. If they say yes, it's done with, period, it goes on to the President. If they move to confer because they don't agree, then the House and Senate form this conference committee, which will be very controlled and very fast. And the reason it will be fast, the Senate vote was 51-49, and as these senators go home, and House members on the Republican side, I'm talking, Tom, of course, as they go home, they're going to hear all kinds of things, people that should like the bill that don't on the corporate side, and also they're going to hear it from people, the whole, the individual mandate, the health care mandate that the Senate has removed. I mean, there's a lot of items in here they're going to hear about. I don't think that the House politically, the Republicans, can afford for too much time to pass. So therefore, they have to make the tricky decision. Do you go along with the Senate, which has, it's still a similar type of bill, don't get me wrong, but it has some differences, or do you, in fact, go to a Conference committee? Again, if it's a Conference committee, before that gavel is banged, they will have decided already, privately, what is going to come out of that conference report. I promise you that. They don't have time. They don't have a win. This is a must for them. So they're going to move on this one way or the other. One way or the other, this is going to the President for signature.
Any idea what the schedule is, Bob?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Any idea what the schedule is?
No, but again, if they let the members go home too long in the district, then they hear about things, they get a little bit squeamish, on what they're doing, and that won't be very good for the Speaker in particular in the House.
Yeah, in your book Sideswiped, you talk about when you were in the House of Representatives and John Boehner was twisting arms on the floor to get a vote, holding vote time so he could get a vote, passing out money or the promise of money, threats or the promise of threats to get a vote. What kind of strong-arm tactics or sweetening tactics do you expect are happening right now in the House of Representatives?
Well, there'll be several. One will be I call it the sweetening factor. If they go to conference, or if they don't go to conference, they can't put a lot of items in the bill, but they can promise. Let me give you an example. Member Smith wants something for their district. I don't know what it is. It could be even a highway. Who knows? And they say, and the Speaker's office would say, well, we can't put that in the bill because we're not going to conference. But when the highway bill comes down the line, we're going to make sure you get what you want there. So that could be, one thing. And if they go into conference, there could be all kinds of items. Then there's the other way, because that's the carrot way. The stick way, which I saw many, many times, of course, and there's three ways. The stick way is going to be where somebody wants something. If they don't go along, they're not going to get it, whether it's a chairmanship. Maybe it's some type of trip they want overseas. I mean, who knows? Whatever they want, and they're going to get penalized if they don't go along with it. The third way is the money power of the color green, the fundraising commitments. Well, if you go along with this and this causes you some heartburn, don't worry, we're going to raise $100,000 for you or $200,000 for you. Or we'll have the president come in your district or not come in your district or do a fundraiser in D.C. I mean, there's all of these ways that they're going to do it. And the House members, some of them, are going to be very tricky about this because they're going to instantly object, knowing that the Speaker has to have a bill. So there's going to be, we'll find out maybe a month later, maybe 2 months later, maybe a year later, Tom, down the line, what they did to get this. And again, I can't stress enough, this is a must bill for a Congress that promised to do things and nothing has occurred.
Bob Ney with Talk Media News. Thank you, Bob.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
It's the second week of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive, and Free Speech TV needs you. I'm here in Washington, D.C., which is why it looks a little different and maybe sounds a little funny, but we're at the headquarters of Our Revolution, and we're going to be interviewing Larry Cohen, who's, I believe, the board chair, and Nina Moore, who is the Senator Nina, who is the president, as I recall, and it's going to be a great show, but the big point is, or it is a great show, I guess you're watching it right now, we pre-recorded this just before the show, but the big point is that when was the last time on, quote, commercial television you saw anybody go to a place like Our Revolution and just talk to the folks for a couple of hours and find out what's going on and what's the state of the real resistance in the United States and who's doing what and what it's turning into and all those kind of things? You're not going to hear that on network television. You're not going to hear that in the corporate media. Instead, you're going to get some dramatic pablum like, you know, who's upset, who's unhappy, you know, is Jared Kushner going to go to jail? Well, of course, we'll talk about whether he's going to go to jail, but that seems to be the only thing that they focus on, you know, or Mike Flynn or whatever, is drama and sports. Who's ahead, who's behind, you know, like the Roy Moore race. You know, they don't talk about Roy Moore's crazy views on things. They don't talk about the fact that in 2011 he co-authored an educational program for for-profit colleges that teaches that women should not be allowed to vote and should not be allowed to run for public office. That was in 2011. That was 6 years ago. Roy Moore co-authored a college course teaching that women should be excluded from the American body politic. Entirely excised. Have you heard that on the news? No, probably what you've heard is the polls, because that's all they do is sports. Here you get the real news. Is that worth something to you? Is it? I mean, again, only 2% of Free Speech TV viewers may ever make a contribution. If you're getting value from this program and this network, please call now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number, 877-378-8669. And if you call during our program, and that's, you know, pretty important, like call right now during this break, and you know, they will be able to provide you with any of a series of premiums that we're offering. With a $30 contribution, you get a Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. Yeah, it's a bumper sticker, but $30, you know, it's I realize for some people it's a lot of money, but for most Americans, that's something that's doable. That's, you know, for a family, you know, that's not even the cost of going out to dinner. $30. With a $60 contribution, you get a bumper sticker, plus the Free Speech TV 16-month calendar. With a $120 contribution, which you can spread out over a year at $10 a month if you want. With a $120 contribution, you get the bumper sticker and the calendar, plus you get Van Jones's new book, Beyond the Messy Truth. Van Jones is one of the real heroes of the progressive movement. He was President Barack Obama's energy czar, his green czar, until, you know, Breitbart and the Wall Street Journal and all these right-wing hysterics, I don't know specifically if it was the Journal, certainly Fox News, went after him. How dare that black man in the White House lecture us about how to use energy when we get money from the fossil fuel barons? And they you know, politically destroyed Van Jones, or got rid of him. We got, you know, forced Obama to get him out of the White House. That's nuts. That's nuts. And it was never even really covered. I mean, the real story was never even covered. It was just how Van Jones leaves the group. Anyhow, he wrote this brilliant book, and that's with a $120 contribution. With a $240 contribution, you get Van Jones's book. Plus, you get a new book called Citizen by Claudia Rankine. And if I'm saying her name right, my apologies to her if I'm saying it wrong, it's Rankine. The book is Citizen, and about the politics of our day. And that's with a $240 gift. You get the bumper sticker, the calendar, Van Jones's book, and Claudia's book. And with a $360 gift, you get all those things, right? The bumper sticker, the calendar, Van Jones's book, Claudia's book, plus you get my book, Unequal Protection. Now, we've offered that before, so if you already have a copy, hey, guess what? It's the holiday season, and it's a great gift. It's not a political screed. Unequal Protection is a book that your conservative uncle can read and probably agree with 95% of it. So that's the collection of gifts, plus with a $1,000 contribution, come to Portland, Oregon, or when Louise and I are here in Washington, D.C., come to D.C., and I'll take you out to lunch. And so that's the spectrum of gifts we have here in exchange for contributions, or not in exchange, in thanks and recognition of contributions. But most important, it's Free Speech TV itself. It's this extraordinary platform that's giving voice to people that the corporate media in America really doesn't want to talk about, topics that they don't want to talk about, even people that they don't. How often do you see Our Revolution on MSNBC or CNN? I mean, it's almost like the media has decided anybody who's really progressive, we don't want to have anything to do with. We've got to have middle-of-the-road Democrats and right-wing Republicans. It's crazy. So please call now to support this network and keep it alive. 877-378-8669. Please call now. Thank you.
TV. It could be leading to extinction.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, broadcasting live from the studios of Our Revolution. And with me is Sam Adaramola.
Yes,
Sam.
Yeah, perfect. Yes.
It's great having you with us, Sam.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for joining. Yeah. First of all, tell us what you do here at Our Revolution and how you came to be here.
I am a graphic designer here at Our Revolution, and I was a big supporter of the Bernie Sanders campaign. And I was doing a little freelance work, and I got a little tired of, doing projects and things that I really didn't care about or was passionate about. And when I saw the opportunity with Our Revolution, I applied, and they gladly gave me the offer, and I've been here ever since.
That is so cool. Now, your English sounds to me like you're a native-born American, and yes. You thought you were until high school. Tell us this story.
Yeah, so I am a first-generation immigrant from Nigeria. I was brought here at the age of 2, and I didn't realize I was undocumented or didn't have any status in this country until I was about to graduate high school rather, and I was doing athletics. I ran track and field, and I was getting some offers for athletic scholarships. And when you have to fill out a collegiate academic form to get an athletic scholarship, you need a social security number. And I had no idea what mine was, and that's when I kind of realized I had no status in the United States. And I had to kind of figure things out. And
what went through your mind?
Well, I was like, what is going on? Mom, why don't I have status? What is my social security number? How can we fix this? Because at the time, it's like all my friends are going to school, getting ready for college, everybody's getting excited, and I'm like missing out on all this, and I felt very terrible and didn't know what to do, and just kind of had my back against the wall throughout all of it. And
so what happened?
Well, my father was a permanent resident and became a naturalized citizen, so he had to file for me. And because there were some issues with some of my documents, I couldn't have everything, they immediately put me on deportation. So I had to go through some deportation proceedings. And
what was that like?
It was very scary. Well, it happened while I was able to go to school, to college, because I started at a community college. And since I didn't have any status, they considered me an international student, so I had to pay almost 4 times as much. And while I was getting my things situated with filing, they give you a conditional work permit. And with that, I got my first job at Starbucks. So it was, using all the money that I got from tips or my paychecks to go towards school. And I was taking like 1 class a semester, just trying to make it work. So when they found that I didn't have a certain amount of documents, they put me on deportation immediately, and that canceled my work permit. And I remember having a job at the time and having to be escorted off of the premises because my work permit was invalid. And my mother was disabled and she wasn't working. And I was basically the man of the house at the time. And just, you can imagine just losing your ability to provide for your family off of something that wasn't your fault. And you thinking you were a good person, I'm a good person, didn't have a criminal background or anything. I just wanted to go to school. I just wanted to earn a good living and be able to provide for my family, and I couldn't do that. And it was a circumstance that was out of my control. And I was brought here as a young kid, so I didn't have the choice of living here, but I was here. And I immediately had to do what I could to make ends meet, and that's how I actually got into graphic design, learning how to create flyers and then do things to make a living as best as I can. And yeah.
Were you a dreamer for a while? Were you part of that?
Yeah, I was a dreamer, but I wasn't able to be a beneficiary of DACA because I was under the deportation proceedings. And ironically enough, when you're on deportation, you get to qualify for something called cancellation of removal, and what you have to do is prove that you've been in the country for a certain amount of years, and I had that with my school records. You also had to prove that you're a person of good moral character. I had people write affidavits of support for me. No criminal background. I was clean, and I am clean. And then lastly, which is the hardest thing to prove, is that you have to prove that your deportation will result in what they call a cruel and unusual hardship for a permanent resident spouse or parent, or naturalized citizen spouse or parent. Since my mother was disabled and since my father was disabled as well, they constituted that as cruel and unusual hardship since I was their only son here. So it's kind of like God having a funny sense of humor that, okay, the only reason why I was able to have status in this country is because I have 2 disabled parents, which is kind of crazy to think about, but that's the road that I had to travel to be able to have status in this country. And I know there's a lot of people who are like me, who are dreamers, who are like me, and who look like me. And oftentimes, the narrative of a dreamer is someone of Latin American culture, but I'm from Africa, and there's a lot of dreamers that are from Africa, that are from other countries, and it needs to be understood that this is a big, big, big thing that affects so many people here who are trying to live good lives, earn good livings, and provide for their families.
Yeah. We have about 3 minutes left. Tell me about your our revolution deals with a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Are you focused on the DACA stuff, or do you do other? I mean, you're doing graphic.
Yeah.
What is it?
Naturally, with my role as a graphic designer, I have to support all things that we do here at Our Revolution. But one thing that we're doing specifically as it pertains to immigration is the Our Dream campaign that we're a part of, which is a coalition of progressive orgs who are trying to push Congress to pass a Clean Dream Act. And if you want to support it, you can go to fightforourdream.org, and there's tons of actions that people could partake in today, tomorrow, and later on in this week. So that's one of the things I'm pushing. My contribution to that is I actually created the logo and some of the imagery surrounded by that. So I'm very happy to be able to be using my skills to support such a positive thing and continue to fight for immigration.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. One of the senators, and I'm sorry, I can't remember which one, maybe you know, one of the senators said that the price for their vote for the Republican tax scam was that Mitch McConnell promised to them that in the future he would do something about DACA, that he would fix DACA, that he would bring it back. I think he was lied to. But I'm curious if you're hearing anything from any Republicans, since they control the House and Senate right now, that might give you and well, you're kind of past the process now, but your peers from when you were, some hope.
Well, we've learned the DREAM Act has been around for a long, long time. So at this point, we're past hoping. That's where our backs are against the wall, and this needs to happen because we don't have time. So I don't think we're looking for hope or a gleam of this being a possibility. We want to do whatever we can to make sure that it's a clean dream that's passed. So I wouldn't say that's something we're looking for. Right now we're focused on doing the actions to get the results that we want. So we're not going to stop until we see it.
Well, and I mean, this is kind of core to the mission of our revolution. We have to build grassroots support.
Exactly, and things don't happen unless that support is there, and that's what our Dream campaign is about.
Yeah. Sam Adaramola?
You had it right.
Can you say it? Okay.
Adaramola.
Adaramola. Thank you, Sam. It's such an honor to meet you, and thank you so much for letting us do our show here from your home.
Thank you.
Your headquarters, your work.
Yeah, thank you.
Great to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more right after this from Our Revolution. Stick around. And welcome back. Let's see here. Lila watching Free Speech TV in Highland Park, Michigan. Hey, Lila. Never mind that.
Yes, Tom?
Hey, Lila.
Hello?
Yes, I hear you.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Tom?
Hello. What's on your mind today, Lila?
Yes, I can hear you.
You cannot hear me. Okay, I'm gonna put Lila on hold, and let's try Joy. And Lila, by the way, is on line 8, Arthur, if you want to check that out. Joy, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, Tom.
Great.
I'm calling to spread the good news. I think we need good news right now. It's been so negative. And I guess that you have discussed on your program the modern monetary theory.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least I was told that.
I have at length,
program.
yes.
Can you hear me?
I hear you just
Hello?
fine. Can you hear me?
Joy
cannot hear.
You're very faint.
Okay.
Hello,
We're trying to get our audio right and fiddling with our game. Yeah, I can hear you just fine, Joy. If it's hard for you to hear me, my apologies, but that's we've got to figure out. We're on the road and things just don't always work the way you want them to.
As coming across on TV, I'm trying to get the news out about the modern monetary theory. And I think it's such good news. Stephanie Kelton, people can find her video on YouTube, Stephanie Kelton, and she explains this MMT very well. And I think that if we can get under that economic theory, she says that deficits are our friends and that our taxes are not used to pay for all these appropriations that Congress makes, that our government issues the money, and it's not limited to our tax dollars, what they are able to spend. And this is something, this is not trickle down, and this is no economic theory I've heard of in the past. I think it's been kept secret. For whatever the reason, we haven't heard of it. And I am pretty confident. She has been on The Real Progressive, and she's a consultant to Bernie Sanders. So I think that this is legitimate, and this is what I want people to find out about. It's called again the MMT economic theory. And I know we glaze over when anyone wants us to study economics, but this is so important to know about this system.
Joy, Stephanie is constantly blogging too over at a website called Naked Capitalism, which is a less boring name than modern monetary theory. And I encourage people to check it out. It's a really great economics blog for progressive economics. Joy, thank you for the call, and thanks for watching Free Speech TV. We will be right back.
Hi there, I'm Marie with Free Speech TV. Your support, whether through giving donations, volunteering, or spreading the word about Free Speech TV, has made it possible for the only independent progressive news network to exist. And for that, I want to say thank you. Now you can give to the network powered by the people by donating an unwanted or used vehicle through our Vehicles of Change program. If you have an old car, RV, or even a motorcycle, Free Speech TV can use it to grow and thrive. You can make a bigger difference in supporting Free Speech TV by giving an old car. It's a great way to support the network without having to dig into your bank account. Just call 877-378-8669 and ask for more information about Vehicles of Change. Again, the number to call is 877-378-8669. If it has a VIN, we'll take it in. Thank you.
I'm Nina Turner, and you're watching Free Speech TV.
We are back with Basi Alonso. Basi, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Great having you here with us. Tell us about what you do here at Our Revolution.
Yeah, so I am an organizer here at Our Revolution. I manage the peer-to-peer texting program. I'm also the organizer for the Northeast, and it's great because I'm from New York, so I get to keep in touch with people back home.
Yeah, that's great. And you have a story to tell about your status here, your life here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm actually a DACA beneficiary, so I currently have DACA. I'm one of the 800,000 people who have this protection against deportation. Thanks to DACA, I've been able to apply for internships and do internships. I've also been able to work and help provide for my family. And aside, the biggest thing is that I have been able to, in a sense, come out of the shadows. I, am no longer as afraid of deportation as I was when I was growing up without this protection.
And what's your, but it seems that given the hostility toward DACA that we're getting out of the Trump administration, that people who are DACA recipients like yourself should be nervous. I mean, I don't mean to, try to increase your level of concern, but what are your thoughts about going forward with this and what the Republicans might do? And I asked Sam before, there was one Republican senator who said that his vote was conditional on Mitch McConnell saying he'd do something about DACA, something positive about DACA. And I don't believe Mitch McConnell ever for anything, but what are your thoughts on where this is going?
Yeah, I mean, there is cause for concern. DACA was repealed on September 5th. So my future and the future of 800,000 people is uncertain. I was actually one of the people who, the day that the repeal was announced, I took action in front of Trump Tower and got arrested, and it was something that I've never done before. But as a person who grows up being told that this place doesn't belong to me, that this isn't my home, that day, I took action and said, this is my space, and I did that to reclaim my space. Yeah, I mean, it's really concerning, but the majority of Americans support a DACA fix, support the DREAM Act. The majority of Americans are behind us, and we even have Republican support behind this legislation. It's a bipartisan legislation. Therefore, I think that this is something that people should support because it's the right thing to do. We've been used as a political football. The protection for other immigrants has always been, we've been used sort of as a sweetener to get protection for other immigrants. We are the sympathetic bunch, right? So Republicans like to use it as leverage for more funding for the border, for more militarization in the border, but we don't want to be used as a political football. We don't want to be the reason why our communities are further criminalized, and so our best chance to get something done is on the December 8th spending bill vote.
So that is going to be the legislation that's the budget going forward? This is not the tax bill, or are you?
It's the spending bill, yeah, the one that's coming up for a vote on December 8th.
And this is the one where they may just push it out 2 weeks, or they may move forward a year or so. But you think that some DACA piece, do you know that DACA is being built into that?
Well, that is something that that is the plan right now to append DACA to the spending, to append the DREAM Act to the spending bill, and there is support by both parties right now, a small group of support, which is why we are doing the actions that we're doing today and tomorrow to get more people to come out and publicly say that they will not support a spending bill if it does not include the DREAM Act.
Give us the details on those actions.
Yeah, so we have about 50 actions right now all across the country, slated to happen today. Some have already happened today, the rest will happen tomorrow. We actually have a group of people right now in Arizona in Senator McCain's office protesting and occupying the space, asking that the senator come out and publicly pledge that he will not vote on the spending bill unless it includes DACA. And he was actually one of the senators in the Gang of Eight a few years back who came out in support of comprehensive immigration reform, but also who has historically been a proponent of the DREAM Act. And so we're hoping that he comes out in support of that.
I think it was Jeff Flake who was the guy who said that.
Jeff Flake has also been, he's actually the co-sponsor of the DREAM Act right now.
He's the other Republican senator from Arizona.
Yeah, he's the co-sponsor to the 2017 version of the DREAM Act.
That's remarkable. We just have a few seconds left. Our Revolution is participating in this. What are you doing? You both singular and plural.
Yeah.
We got about 10 seconds.
Okay. Through Our Revolution, I've been helping provide remote support for action hosts. And if people want to get involved and follow the actions, they should visit fightforourdream.org, as well as following the hashtags No Dream No Deal and Our Dream, hashtag Our Dream, to lift up those actions. And call your senators. There's people that are going to be taking action, so call your senators.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
That's Basi Alonso with Our Revolution. Basi, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
We'll be back with your calls. It's the second week of the Free Speech TV Pledge Drive, and Free Speech TV needs you. I'm here in Washington, D.C., which is why it looks a little different and maybe sounds a little funny. But we're at the headquarters of Our Revolution, and we're going to be interviewing Larry Cohen, who's I believe the board chair, and Nina Moore, who is the Senator Nina, who is the president, as I recall. And it's going to be a great show, but the big point is, or it is a great show, I guess you're watching it right now. We pre-recorded this just before the show, but the big point is that when was the last time on, quote, commercial television You saw anybody go to a place like Our Revolution and just talk to the folks for a couple of hours and find out what's going on and what's the state of the real resistance in the United States and who's doing what and what it's turning into and all those kind of things? You're not going to hear that on network television. You're not going to hear that in the corporate media. Instead, you're going to get some dramatic pablum like, you know, who's upset, who's unhappy, you know, is Jared Kushner going to go to jail? Well, of course, we'll talk about whether he's going to go to jail, but that seems to be the only thing that they focus on, you know, or Mike Flynn or whatever, is drama and sports. Who's ahead, who's behind, you know, like the Roy Moore race. You know, they don't talk about Roy Moore's crazy views on things. They don't talk about the fact that in 2011 he co-authored an educational program for for-profit colleges that teaches that women should not be allowed to vote and should not be allowed to run for public office. That was in 2011. That was 6 years ago. Roy Moore co-authored a college course teaching that women should be excluded from the American body politic. Entirely excised. Have you heard that on the news? No, probably what you've heard is the polls, because that's all they do is sports. Here you get the real news. Is that worth something to you? Is it? I mean, again, only 2% of Free Speech TV viewers may ever make a contribution. If you're getting value from this program and this network, please call now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number, 877-378-8669. And if you call during our program, and that's, you know, pretty important, like call right now during this break, and you know, they will be able to provide you with any of a series of premiums that we're offering. With a $30 contribution, you get a Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. Yeah, it's a bumper sticker, but $30, you know, it's I realize for some people it's a lot of money, but for most Americans, that's something that's doable. That's, you know, for a family, you know, that's not even the cost of going out to dinner. $30. With a $60 contribution, you get a bumper sticker, plus the Free Speech TV 16-month calendar. With a $120 contribution, which you can spread out over a year at $10 a month if you want. With a $120 contribution, you get the bumper sticker and the calendar, plus you get Van Jones's new book, Beyond the Messy Truth. Van Jones is one of the real heroes of the progressive movement. He was President Barack Obama's energy czar, his green czar, until, you know, Breitbart and the Wall Street Journal and all these right-wing hysterics, I don't know specifically if it was the Journal, certainly Fox News, went after him. How dare that black man in the White House lecture us about how to use energy when we get money from the fossil fuel barons? And they you know, politically destroyed Van Jones, or got rid of him. We got, you know, forced Obama to get him out of the White House. That's nuts. That's nuts. And it was never even really covered. I mean, the real story was never even covered. It was just how Van Jones leaves the group. Anyhow, he wrote this brilliant book, and that's with a $120 contribution. With a $240 contribution, you get Van Jones's book. Plus, you get a new book called Citizen by Claudia Rankine. And if I'm saying her name right, my apologies to her if I'm saying it wrong, it's R-A-N-K-I-N-E. The book is Citizen, and you know, about the politics of our day. And that's with a $240 gift. You get the bumper sticker, the calendar, Van Jones's book, and Claudia's book. And with a $360 gift, you get all those things, right? The bumper sticker, the calendar, Van Jones's book, Claudia's book, plus you get my book, Unequal Protection. Now, we've offered that before, so if you already have a copy, hey, guess what? It's the holiday season, and it's a great gift. It's not a political screed. Unequal Protection is a book that your conservative uncle can read and probably agree with 95% of it. So that's the collection of gifts. Plus, with a $1,000 contribution, come to Portland, Oregon, or when Louise and I are here in Washington, D.C., come to D.C., and I'll take you out to lunch. And so that's the spectrum of gifts we have here in exchange for contributions, or not in exchange, in thanks and recognition of contributions. But most important, it's Free Speech TV itself. It's this extraordinary platform that's giving voice to people that the corporate media in America really doesn't want to talk about, topics that they don't want to talk about, even people that they don't. You know, how often do you see Our Revolution on MSNBC or CNN? I mean, it's almost like the media has decided anybody who's really progressive we don't want to have anything to do with. We've got to have middle-of-the-road Democrats and right-wing Republicans. It's crazy. So please call now to support this network and keep it alive. 877-378-8669. Please call now. Thank you.
TV.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you live from the offices of Our Revolution. We're going to be featuring different organizations here in D.C. throughout the week. We will be at Social Security Works, we will be at Greenpeace, we will be at the Postal Workers Union, and we're going to do our show from We Act Radio. So, and to our radio stations who are listening, you know, every place will have different audio, but we're doing everything we can to clean this up and make it work. This is a kind of our experimental run, you know, our first time just going out on the road and sitting in people's offices and talking. And so we're learning how to adjust our microphones and everything else to get decent audio. So my apologies to our radio stations and SiriusXM and whatnot who you know, a few people on Facebook have been saying, hey, you sound like you're in the bottom of a barrel. We're working on it. And I hope it sounds a whole lot better right now than it started when we started the show. And I think it probably should. It certainly should. We've done a lot of tweaking here today. And it'll get better as the week goes on. Lila in Highland Park, Michigan. Hey, Lila, thank you for calling the program. What's on your mind?
Tom. I'm 88 years old. Okay. Now, since all of these senators and congressmen, whoever, is trying to take all of our benefits away, I know they have the best of everything. Why can't we get together as a nation and vote to take all of their benefits away and cut their salaries and see how they feel about that?
Yeah.
And how we
well, Lila,
doing that?
There's no mechanism for us to do that. We don't have national referendums like, you know, some states do where the citizens can vote on things. But two thoughts. Number one, Congress is known for a long time how unpopular they are, and they even passed a constitutional amendment some time back that said that members of Congress could not raise their own pay. It always had to be the pay of future Congresses. Although, you know, so 96% of members of Congress just roll over every year because of gerrymandering. So, you know, there's that. But also, I think that the principal way that we hold our members of Congress, you know, whether it's the House or the Senate, the way that we hold them accountable, and Lila, thank you for the call, is by voting them out of office. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's very straightforward. You know, if they're not doing their job, if they're not doing the people's work, vote them out. Carl in Arlington, Virginia. Hey, Carl, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. I don't know if you can hear me. I've heard of other people having problems, so...
I hear you just fine, and I hear everybody just fine, Carl. My audio to you is probably fairly faint because we had to dial back my microphone here to not pick up an echo. But if you listen very carefully, you'll be able to hear me just fine. Hopefully hear me just fine. I know a number of other people have been able to. So what's up, Carl?
Yeah, I've got you. A plan of action for the Congress, the Democrats, about the debt ceiling. I believe that they should hold firm and say, you want our cooperation, the bill must also eliminate pay-go. After all, the Republicans have said their tax cuts are going to cause any deficits, A, and B, they control the House and the Senate. They can individually vote to kill or reduce Social Security and Medicare. Of course, they wouldn't have the guts to do it. So the key is the cuts shouldn't be automatic. Get rid of pay-go, and they would have to vote individually to do this. What do you think, Tom?
I think it's a good idea, Carl, although I'm not sure that you're correctly identifying the problem, or maybe I'm wrong on this. My understanding was that next year, the $25 billion cut to Medicare, which is automatically going to kick in according to either the CBO or the Congressional Joint Taxation Committee, or whatever congressional committee just scored this bill, that is not a result of pay-go, that's a result of the sequestration. Unless they're the same thing or they're conflated somehow. Am I missing something here, Carl?
I'm not sure either. but I've heard, in the discussions that the cuts would be automatic because of pay-go. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and I don't know.
No, it's possible we're both right, and pay-go was part of the process of sequestration, although I thought that sequestration was brought in as a sweetener to the Republicans to get them to go along with Obama's stimulus bill or something like it. It was something in that era. It's been a decade, and nearly. And I'm sorry, Carl, I don't remember the exact details, but whether it's pay-go or whether it's sequestration, both of them can be subject to a negative vote by Congress. They can both be eliminated by Congress. They were both put in place by Congress. So your point, my point, whichever bill it is, the point, the theme, the concept that you're promoting is absolutely accurate. And Congress doesn't have to. We don't have to go into 2018 knowing that at some point in 2018 the congressional budget, these automatic cuts are going to kick in, whether it's sequestration or pay-go, and the $25 billion will get sucked out of Medicare, which means that a lot of people who are on Medicare who will have large expenses, the people who are going through chemotherapy where it's $100,000 a year for chemo, those people are simply not going to be able to get their services anymore. And we saw this in 2013, and there was some sort of a battle in 2013 that I think triggered sequestration. It was a near government shutdown, and or maybe even a shutdown. And there was, for about a week there, it looked like there was going to be this automatic cut to Medicare. Well, this time it's huge. I mean, in fact, I think they're planning for it. This is the whole thing. Marco Rubio the other day said, the biggest structural problem we have with regard to our deficits is Social Security and Medicare. Of course, Social Security has nothing to do with the deficits. Social Security has its own damn trust fund, and Medicare should have nothing to do with the deficits. We all pay Medicare taxes. So, the Republicans are doing, Carl, thank you for the call. The Republicans are doing what they have always done. This is the two Santa Claus theory that June Wadisky laid out in, I think, 1977 in his famous paper, the Two Santa Clauses paper, which is when Republicans are in office, they need to be the Santa Claus of tax cuts and give away tax cuts as much as they can, as broadly as they can, and no matter what it does to the deficit. Run up the debt. That's a good thing, according to June Wadisky's Two Santa Claus theory. And then when a Democrat comes into power, particularly if you get a Democratic president and a Democratic Congress, scream like bloody hell about the deficit. Oh my God, the debt is so big, the deficit is so big, the national debt is $20 trillion, we can't do this, we've got to cut. And force the Democrats to shoot their Santa Clauses, which is Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, long-term unemployment insurance, CHIP, education support, the dream, well, that's not so much an expense, but anything that costs money, right? And that's exactly what they're doing. And they're actually, I mean, Marco Rubio was bragging about this a couple of days ago. Several members of Congress have come right out and said, not only are we doing this tax cut because our donors are demanding it, they invested $1 billion in the election. They want $1,500 billion, $1.5 trillion in return, and they're going to get it if the Republicans have their way. But not only are they doing that, but this is stage 2 of the Two Santa Claus theory. Or actually, this is stage 1 of the Two Santa Claus theory in its 4th or 5th iteration since 1977. Reagan did it, Bush did it, and now Trump is doing it. Or at least the Republicans are doing it. It's what they always do. Run up the deficit so that you can scream about the deficit, so you can use that hysteria to privatize Social Security and to kill off Medicare and Medicaid, transfer them to programs run by the big health insurance companies that kick back giant donations to Republicans. Patrick in Seaside, California. Hey, Patrick, what's up?
Greetings from May Brussels country. Tom, how are you?
Thank you. Great.
What's up? Beautiful Monterey Peninsula, Central Coast, California. I wanted to talk about net neutrality in the Republican tax bill. First of all, I don't know of any organized protests at Verizon stores this Thursday, so at least myself and one friend are going to go to our local Verizon store at Del Monte Center Shopping Center. I had a couple of questions.
It's going to be a nationwide protest.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. First of all, if we lose net neutrality, I have Metro PCS as my phone carrier. If I want to go to alternate.org which you write for frequently, and Common Dreams and other progressive sites, will I be blocked? And if we lose net neutrality, can we get it back under a Democratic administration? The same thing, can we reverse the Republican tax bill? And also, for those of us who are protesting at our Verizon stores, should we be concerned about our local police as far as our picketing? Should we also not engage customers? Should we just let our signs do the talking?
Yes. Okay. Let me take those in reverse order. When you are protesting, just follow the basic rules that are basically the codification of the First Amendment's right to assemble. For people to assemble and petition their government for redress of grievances. And that means stay on public property, which is typically a public sidewalk. Don't step into the street, which is not a place for pedestrians. Be respectful. If you're interacting with the police, be respectful to them. If you're interacting with the Verizon employees, they are people just like you and me. They're just people trying to make a paycheck. And in fact, it's probably not a particularly good paycheck, so they're low on the food chain. And they're not the villains. Be very nice to them. In fact, you might even want to go in and introduce yourself to them and just say, we're going to be walking around with signs out here for a few hours and nothing personal, and just want to let you guys know. And they may call the cops or they may not, who knows, but very straightforward. In terms of your other two questions, number one, yes, net neutrality can be, if we lose net neutrality, it could be reversed under a Democratic administration, number one. And number two, yes, your ISP can, if we lose net neutrality, they can block Alternet and Common Dreams and every other progressive site if they choose to. And that's the big problem with losing net neutrality. Patrick, thank you for the call. Good luck.
Listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And super good on Patrick for showing up for the gig with the Verizon stores and whatnot. Let your thoughts be known. Back, Anthony in Denver, Colorado. Hey, Anthony, what's on your mind today?
Hey there, Tom. Well, I was just thinking, I know that you have following, I think it was Joy who called earlier about MNT, following this year's spending trends so far, the Congress and Senate together has really showed us that the deficit doesn't really matter. So they increased military spending, and now they're decreasing the revenue that they're going to be receiving by more than what Bernie Sanders' college forgiveness plan was. So I think that Democrats or progressives can really take this opportunity to not do what you said and kill their own Santa Claus, but instead say, okay, if the Republicans can pass this and do this, then there's absolutely no reason for us to stop helping people with deficit spending, since they're obviously not worried about expanding the deficit. At least that was just my comment on it.
I agree with you, and here's a rationalization for that, Anthony. In Japan, everybody has a national health insurance program. Everybody has free health care, essentially. Everybody has free education all the way up through MD or PhD. They have a solid social safety net. Their unemployment programs are great. Their elder care, their equivalent of what we would call nursing homes and hospice care, which are two separate things, but they're equivalent of those things. They're all spectacular. They work really, really well. And Japan, right now, our debt is almost 100% of GDP when you take out the parts of the debt that aren't actually parts of the debt, like the Social Security Trust Fund, which is held in treasury bills, so it seems to inflate the debt. It looks like we have this $20 trillion deficit. It's actually around 16 trillion, which is in the neighborhood of our GDP, which is around 16 trillion. So we're at about 100% of GDP. We were at 129% of GDP in 1950 when we came out of World War II. So we've been actually, debt-wise, in worse shape than we are right now. And Dwight Eisenhower paid that off, in much of it, in 8 years, by building the interstate highway system and reinvigorating the American economy. But the Japanese have been doing deficit spending for a while. That's exactly right. I didn't know it was as high as 250. I thought it was around 210 or 220, but whatever it is, it's over 200% of GDP in Japan. and they have no inflation. And inflation is the big boogeyman that everybody talks about, particularly the Fed always talks about.
Trying to get more inflation because they have
that's right
economy, and that's bad for investments over the long run. So they want to have slight
that's
inflation,
exactly right.
but even with 250% of their GDP, they can't get to it. So that's why I think there's a lot of movement now from the MNT type of crowd to push for
You're absolutely right.
spending for.
So our message could be really simple here. Yeah, our message could be really, really simple, Anthony. We could simply say if the Republicans are willing to add $1.5 trillion to the debt in order to give $5 trillion to the billionaire class and the big corporations, we're willing to add $1.5 trillion to the debt to eliminate all student debt in the United States and going forward to have no student debt. You know, that would cost about $1 trillion, $1.2 trillion to wipe it all out, and you just set another $0.3 trillion, $300 billion aside to start, tuition payments and things like that. We can do the same thing. And, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I love your logic. I think it's a brilliant idea. Anthony, thanks for the call and thanks for making a great suggestion. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Howard in Manhattan. Hey, Howard, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I was going to talk a little bit about the sixth extinction, but you covered it very well. I would just add to that they've had defunding some of the pure research in the NIH budget, and the part that will be affected is the part where they did the research in order to treat any new pathogens that will arise, which obviously we need to prevent the pandemic. But as long as I have just one quick, I'm sort of changing my mind. You talked about the tax legislation and Marco Rubio about the defunding Social Security and Medicare. Before we leave, can you give your audience some ray of hope or some good news?
Yeah, well, that's always a good question or a good request, Howard. The good news is whatever the Republicans do, the Democrats can undo, number one. And number two, in all probability, what the Republicans are doing is going to lead to a disaster. Now, that's mixed news. It's not good news for the people who are going to be hurt, the people who are going to be foreclosed on. There's going to be another mortgage crisis. There's going to be when things go down, they're going to go down very painfully. That's the bad news for all of us who are going to be hurt by that.
Are you going to win the 2018 House?
I think I would put it at about a 10 or 20% chance, but I think 2020, the odds are well over 50%.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Tom, for the great work you always do.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you, Howard. And by the way, let me just add a caveat to that. If we're going to take the House, the Senate, and the White House in 2020, everybody needs, and Howard, thank you for your call. I don't want to direct this just to you, but I'm talking to you now who are listening. You have to make sure that you are registered to vote. And if you live in a state where you have a Republican Secretary of State and or a Republican governor, they have, in all probability, as they did in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Ohio, and in Indiana, just before the last election, they knocked literally tens to hundreds of thousands of people off the voting rolls in each one of those states. Principally people, this is Chris Kobach's program, Interstate Crosscheck, principally people of color, principally people who have Hispanic, Asian, or common African-American last names. Those are the people who got thrown off although a lot of people who simply had the misfortune of living in largely Democratic districts, white people got thrown off too. So if you live in an area where the Republicans can be messing with the voting rolls, double check it and do it every 3 or 4 months. Double check your voter registration because the Republicans don't want you to vote. I am convinced that the one thing that could have changed in the last election that would have made Hillary Clinton president is if Rick Snyder in Michigan, if Scott Walker in Wisconsin, if John Kasich in Ohio, if whoever the guy is who followed Mike Pence in Indiana, if the governor of Pennsylvania, if all of these, in those states, they had said to Chris Kobach, prove to us that we should take 300,000 people off our voting rolls. Prove it to us. Then Hillary Clinton would be in the White House right now. Because she lost in most of those states by fewer than 20,000 votes. And literally hundreds of thousands of people were stripped from the voting rolls. And they're continuing it. And right now there's a Democrat who's on the president's so-called voting commission who's suing the commission because Chris Kobach is planning the next giant voter purge for the 2018 election, for next year's election. He's planning in secret. Only Republicans on the voting commission can participate in the meetings. There's actually a lawsuit about this right now. I mean, this is how crazy it is. So we have to fight back at the individual level because the Republicans are absolutely committed to keeping us from voting. So, step by step, right? Heidi in Bellevue, Washington. Hey, Heidi, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I've taken to calling you every week because you're my therapy. But anyway, you had a caller who was running for Santa Fe City Council, and you asked him how helpful the Democratic Party had been. I ran for City Council in my town over the summer, and it's kind of a runoff. There were 3 people, and then 2 would make it to the final elections. So anyway, my experience with the Democratic Party was just the opposite. When I filed to run for City Council, I received an email from the Democratic Party asking me to fill out, some paperwork to come speak, to see if they could support me and to come speak to the party, my local party. And I filled it out. I was invited to come to a meeting on a Tuesday. I think I filled it out on the week before, but I was invited to come speak to the party, to meet with the party on the following Tuesday. And then over the weekend, I got an email that I had been disinvited, and I asked why, and they said that I wasn't a Democrat because I had worked with Kshama Sawant, the socialist, socialist Seattle City Council. I'm in a suburb of Seattle. The the socialist Seattle council member, and so I was disinvited. The real reason turned out to be that really a lovely woman whom I know tangentially, an extremely qualified woman, was running for the Democratic seat. But they didn't tell me that. I mean, this woman was so qualified. I mean, she did undergrad, University of Washington, she's an immigration lawyer. She went to Yale for law school, got a master's degree in public administration from Harvard. And so anyway, so that they didn't tell me. So I was not able to withdraw. So I, went ahead and ran, as a Democratic socialist. Right. And I ended up getting about almost 10% of the vote. But the thing is...
Whoa, that's great. Heidi, real quick.
So anyway, then I was asked to endorse this woman, and I did it because I just had a feeling that she was going to lose because of the shenanigans of the Democratic Party around here.
Heidi, I'm flat out of time, but thank you. It's an amazing story, and thank you so much for the call. I wish I had another 30 seconds to hear the very end of it. Thank you so much for being with us today. OurRevolution.com, check it out. We'll be in other places throughout the week, and don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you. Get out there, get active, tag. You're it. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit ThomHartmann.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
The Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242.
Or visit tomsbeats.com.